Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sparkys Tech Corner. This is a little bit of a different live stream. This is actually one I wanted to do for like the last year or so, talking about one of my favorite games, Megaman Legends. And I think I've got a good panel of people on here to actually talk about the game with. And before I go through and I introduce everyone, what I like to ask the chat to do is please like and share on Twitter, Discord, so let's see how many people can actually get in and see if we can actually get some good interaction from chats and people coming in that's interested about this game also. KION, you say your audio is working, right? So we'll put that to test pretty soon. Right now with me, I've got Jen Max. Pin couldn't join us. She's been going on and off about different things. It's been kind of a bad day for her. So if she decides to come in, she'll come in. If not, well, she's watching from the sidelines and helping out where she can. But I do have Jen Max in here, and I know he's played the Legends games a couple times. He's one of my regular co-hosts, and I like to thank him for coming on. Now to the two main people that's in here. First person I want to introduce, his name is Hishif. And if you don't know who he is, if you've ever seen the fan-made comic, Rockman-Legends, this is actually the creator of that comic. And I'll let him explain a little bit about himself after I get done introducing the next person. And his name is KION, and if you follow him on his Twitter, he actually does some really unique things with ripping game code and translating it, trying to figure out how the PlayStation hardware interacts with some of the old style games like Legends, Legends 2, and a couple other different games. And has been working on plugins to be able to plug those assets into Blender and actually be able to do work or just play around with character models, world models, and such forth and stuff like that. So with that, I'll let Hishif introduce himself and kind of explain a little bit on what he has done with his comic that he's been making, kind of just the basics, and then we'll go into like questions afterwards
Yay.
All right, it's all on you, man.
Hi, Sparky. Thanks for having me on your channel, and yeah, thanks to everyone. Hi, name is HF. I'm the author of the RMDL, the Rockman Dash Legends of webcomic, and yeah, what's to say about it's something that I started about actually 9 years ago, which I just started throwing ideas around, just drawing a few pages and just sharing it, trying to get ideas. And now it's just something which I just put pages out when I got the time, just drawing out concepts, just trying to draw from different parts of the games, different translations, like the Japanese version, English version, try to put them together. So that's why I use a mix of the lingo, and now I'm just putting up pages and just trying to hit all the key points of the story as I go along. And yeah, it's still, of course, it's still ongoing, but a lot of the key parts of how the story was actually finished. So I'm just putting out the pages and try to make it look as crazy as possible, basically. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it.
As crazy as possible. That sounds fun. With that, I'll go ahead and go down to KION and let him introduce himself and a little bit about what he's done. So you get your audio set up. Is that all working good? If it's push to talk, you probably have to keep hold of it while you talk. And
Did we lose our first guest?
No. Second guest.
Potato.
Yeah, it's all good. If you see my Sunday show, it's usually riddled with all sorts of audio issues, so it's no big deal. If we can come back around, once you get your audio set back up and you do your introductions and stuff like that from there. But I want to go into a little bit about the comic that Headships has been working on for the last 9 years. I want to say I probably came across it. When I first came across it, I think there was like 8 or 9 pages out. And it was still in the prologue version of the story. And just some of the artwork caught me. And just the fact that, somebody's took the time, went through, and actually made a comic book for a game. A lot of people will go, "Oh, that's no big deal" and stuff like that. But if you're an avid fan of the Legends franchise, kind of like I am, it is a big deal because if everyone knows, we only got 2 games, and the second game got left off with a massive fucking blue ball hanger. So, so to this day, as far as we know, Volna is still on the moon, stuck. So, but seeing somebody have the thought of actually going through and doing a story kind of got to me a little bit of excitement and interest, because back a long time ago, I want to say back 2005, 2006, I was still in high school. I wanted to do something similar, but I know I'm a trash artist. I can't draw to save my fucking life. So it was like, I can't make a comic book. So I thought about doing like a novel or something like that. But I could really never get around to forming a good idea how to go along with the storyline. And what I ultimately wanted to do was like create a ending or a continuation from the second game. So coming across his fan-made comic really struck out to me as like something I was real interested in. So I got a couple questions I'd like to ask, and afterwards we can talk a lot about the actual Megaman Legends world. So first question I've got for
Sure.
you.
Yeah, sure.
What was your actual? What made you want to go through and go, hey, I want to make a comic of this? What got you to the point of I'm going to make a comic book of this and get to the point you are now?
Yeah, it's it's interesting question. It's when I first started, I was it's mostly just an experiment to see if I how well I could actually draw and how like since before I started actually drawing the pages of the comic, I just did a lot of one-offs like illustrations, those sort of static stuff, and just tried coloring, just doing some things, and I just experimented with it around 2011 ish, late then. So I just pushed it. So I just okay. So I just did some with drafts and just some ideas, just throwing it around. What do people think? They say to continue. So I just kept adding to it, and so basically a lot of the stuff which I have in the early pages were just roughs, really basic stuff, just covering literally word for word what's happened in the first game. But then afterwards, the more I worked on it, and then I just played the games a bit more, then found a lot more about the Easter eggs, and I read up on the what should I say the differences in the Japanese version and English version, since I played a bit of both growing up. Since so that's why I just okay. So the translations were pretty interesting, and for me, it's because back then, you know, there are a lot of games which you don't have in the you only have it in English, but in the Japanese version, they're so different. So what struck me is that why I chose the name Dash Legends was because is the basic putting the Japanese version and English version together to make it into one consistent localization in a way, which is one of my main inspirations for the title. And I just kept adding to it and just okay, so they have some Easter eggs here which are a bit obscure. For example, there's a certain character in the game which you can only encounter under certain circumstances, but the character doesn't do much. And I think some people know who that is. And just kept trying to adding more and more stuff to it. Yeah, I just got the ball rolling from there, and I just kept drawing and just trying to improve how I draw, trying to improve how I use different tools. So it's a bit of a showcase of sorts. And yeah, embarrassingly, as you can tell, the first pages weren't very well refined, since it was still a very rough period when I was still trying to define how the characters looked, or just how my drawing style would proceed from there. Kind of like that. And yeah, that's basically my inspiration. It's just that I just wanted to see how far I could go.
Yeah. So you said 2011. Was this before or after the cancellation of Legends Free?
That was a little bit before the cancellation. I was actually already doing a few pages, but then there was some stuff happened. As you remember, I was in Tokyo at the time of the Tohoku earthquake when that happened,
Yeah.
and so that's why I got out of there and had to go back to Hong Kong, since that's where I'm from actually, and I just had to continue job hunting and all that. So that's why but I still continue drawing since I like it. It's something that just keep my mind off stuff and just to, you know, my main job is a technical coding and stuff, but then I like to just to have a bit of catharsis and just draw stuff blow up, shit blowing up. I like that. That's kind of my thing.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like seeing a good explosion, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing Sparky told me to turn off my soundboard now.
So you were in Japan whenever Fukushima Daiichi happened.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's basically the Tohoku earthquake, followed by the tsunami in Sendai, and then the Fukushima reactor thing happened. So it's wasn't a good time, and that's why my folks were worried, and they told me to get the hell out of there.
Oh damn.
So yeah, and
That's
yeah.
I couldn't imagine that. I really couldn't. I mean, we know it's something that affected the entire world, but being in the country at the time that happened, I just couldn't imagine that. That's some scary shit.
Yeah, it was actually because it's the first time that I saw I was in a place where everything suddenly stopped working, since in Japan everything was so consistent. You had the trains running. You had people just minding their own business, going back and forth to and from work to play, drink, and all that. And all of a sudden, when the earthquake hit, I went out of the building. Everyone just stopped there, just watching the live feed of Sendai being flooded. It's pretty surreal. All the trains stopped because of the earthquake was really big at the time, and it's pretty. Yeah, it's quite a interesting. No, it's quite a surprising and unique experience.
I know a couple. Yeah. Hey, you got your audio working. Cool.
Yeah, I'm on Android now. I gave up on trying to get it done through the browser.
I am so
cool.
sorry,
hey,
man.
KION.
Hey, what's up?
Hey.
So with that, let's go ahead and segue. Let's segue back just a little bit. And I'll let KION introduce himself.
Had a funny story about Fukushima, though. No, because my wife got stuck at Tokyo Station for an entire day because the trains were stopped.
That was that was also because of the Toga thing, right? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I mean, you were in Tokyo too, right?
Yeah, I was actually in Shinjuku at the time, but yeah, it's everything stopped.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, my wife works at the McDonald's at Yurakucho at that time, and so when she was on her way home, it just everything. If she got off work a little bit earlier, she would have been able to get on the train and go home. But she was stuck at the station for the entire night, along with like everyone else.
Wow. Yeah.
That sucks.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so let's shift gears back. KION, I kind of explained a little bit of the stuff you've been doing, with like ripping game code and developing your own engine on how to basically decipher how the game works. I'll let you explain a little bit more about it. You know, you're the expert at it, and just a little bit about this stream is about Megaman Legends, so we'll kind of keep it oriented around that. So go.
Okay. Yeah, for I guess the short version of the Megaman Legends stuff is X Daniel. X, if anyone recognizes that name, he had the original kind of like Megaman viewer. And he had his code up online. So I started looking into that. I think it took me about like 1 or 2 years to kind of be able to like translate the code and just kind of like go through and work through what he'd done and just kind of start working from there. And I was able to use that as a base point and just kind of start building stuff on top of that. Like, okay, where's this? How does this work? What are these things? And I just kind of, look, okay, well, where's this stored? And just kind of look through more and more assets, take notes, and just kind of write more and more code to be able to kind of start viewing the models and then exporting them. And it's just kind of developed from there. I don't actually look too much at the game code. I don't know a lot about assembler. It's mostly just like when you look at a model and data, it's a list of vertices and it's a list of faces, and you just kind of have to track down where those are stored.
And yeah, I know whenever you're going through and some of your first trial runs, you're trying to assemble what was it, the actual textures to the 3D graphics, and they were like all over the place.
Yeah, it's always the first steps are always you just get a huge Silent Hill style horror show. It's like, oh my god, it's so wrong. How can it be so wrong? And you just kind of have to work from there and just kind of like get down a piece of paper. Okay, here's we can export the texture, we can export or we can view the model, and then you just kind of write out the list of texture of the UV indices, and then you just kind of go from there. Okay, well, where's this part of this texture? And you just kind of have to start narrowing it down. But yeah, first step is always a huge horror show.
I bet. Yeah. So some of what that you two have done, and it sounds like the way I could put it is like a small world, right? Especially with you two. But it sounds like you guys do a lot of interesting things. So,
I don't know about interesting. Mostly it's just mine. It's like completely sleep deprivation. If I go to work, for 8 hours a day, and then I work on Megaman Legends and my own stuff at 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. So it's just a complete like caffeinated, horrible sleep deprivation.
Well, hell, if you're up one of these Sundays and I'm doing a show, you're more than welcome. Both of you guys are actually more than welcome to jump on. My Re-Caffeinated show on Sundays is it's an open forum. If anybody wants to jump in, talk, chat, whatever, it's open to anyone. It's just basically it's just basically just a Sunday morning talk show. We get on, we talk about the things that happened the week, and just what interests us. Like what we had to go through in the week, or what do we find on Twitter, what do we find on YouTube, and this and that. And there's no real format to it. It's just a group of people, group of friends together, just bullshitting online. And the style's what? It's what for about 20 episodes now, and it's a revamp of an old show I did with a friend of mine, Antoine, on his channel, and till things happened, we had to switch gears, and I just basically resurrected it back on my channel. And but from there, I can't do any of the stuff that you guys do. I can't use that symbol to save my freaking life on my computer trying to do the 3D texturing and stuff like that, and I damn sure can't fucking draw. So you guys have a lot above me.
I'm kind of the opposite camp because I can't do anything from I can't solder to save my life. Like I can anything actual. Like I saw I watched a lot of your NES, repair videos, and I have no idea. This is complete black magic to me.
Yeah,
Black magic, huh?
same with the soldering stuff and repairing stuff. I do a bit of assembly stuff when I used to work on arcades and stuff, but that's as far as my extent goes. Basically, kind of like adult Lego. Basically, that's as far as my technical skills go.
Well, I can safely say I'm the only mechanic in my shop that actually knows how to solder, and it's came in handy multiple times. And to me, it's something I do as a hobby. I probably could utilize it in some way, shape, or form in this area to open up a business of my own. To be able to repair computers and stuff like that. I've done it for friends. I've built computers for friends. There's a bar down the road that I go to every now and then. They had a couple light trays that weren't working, and I got them fixed for them, and I do stuff like that on the side. Right now, I'm in the middle of trying to repair, completely rebuild a steel chainsaw that I've had for a while. So I do a lot of stuff on the side for fun, and I try to do a lot of stuff on my channel because my channel I look at as a hobby. I want to do stuff and share it with people, and YouTube allows me the ability to do that. Now, none of my stuff's monetized. I don't look to try to get more. I mean, it's not about getting big, getting famous. It's just having fun. If I get more views, cool. If I get more subs, cool. Is it gonna be monetized? Probably never. Do I have a Streamlabs? Yeah, but I hardly even chill it out. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but it's just, to me, it's just having fun. Dragonf.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Dragonf, if you want to join in, because I know Dragonf brought the idea to me of doing like a Megaman Legends style race. Basically, the first one to the boat wins. I bounced the idea around, and I'm interested in doing that. I just gotta sit down time to actually be able to do it. I knew I couldn't do it this week because I was doing this video and everything else. But yeah, we'll probably gotta do that sometime. So let's go ahead and continue on. We're kind of getting veered off topic a little bit. Jim, X, do you have any questions, or are you just along for the ride? And he's probably still muted. Yep, he's still muted. Okay, so we're gonna go. The format I'm gonna try to keep with this one is I'm gonna ask Hiship. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce the damn name right. I'm gonna ask him a couple more questions. Then we'll swap gears over and we'll go to KION and we'll talk to him a little bit, and then we'll switch gears from there and just talk about the game itself and what we think and stuff like that. So next question. What have you got in some of your ideas? Because I know some of the stuff in the comic is not canon in the game. There's one police officer. It looks like a police officer. He comes in and it gives me like a Doctor Who perspective of this mysterious person comes in and is a badass, but you don't see him anywhere in the game. So stuff like that. Where'd you get the concept ideas?
Well, the officer with the landmines and who's grades above the others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, it's one of the ideas I was just wondering around because there's actually obscure character called Artillery in the first game where you can only meet him in the library or in certain parts of the city during certain parts of the game. There was I think it was number 20. He was actually talked about who this character was, and he was actually a scrapped character who was meant to be some sort of rival for Rock. And that's where my inspiration came from, is basically to put him in a certain role, but while he is canon, but at the same time, because his character was never really established beyond concepts, that's why I just want to see how far I can put this character, but at the same time not try to overshadow others. So I just try to put him in a bit of a background in the meantime. And we'll see how that goes.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, there was actually a bit of a fan art. There was a very, very few bits of art, fan art of this character, but at the same time, because there was nothing established about him, so he was a bit of a blank slate. So I just thought, okay, so what if we put him in a higher capacity? He's able to fight really hard. He's got a lot of special abilities. He's got a lot of unique abilities not shown in the games, and just to put him as a unique character and to see what his connections are with the sequel, like with the Diggers Guild, with the Diggers Guild, and all those. So I just, in a way, a bit of a call forward, but also a bit of a call back and forth to make the first game a bit less of a standalone, but has more connection to the future events and past events, that kind of thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, to add a little bit to that. To add a little bit to that, when I was exporting characters from the library, I came across this character and I was like, "Who is this?" And everyone's like, "Oh, that's Artillery." And so it's kind of funny. Then after that, I kind of learned the what Chef just said. But yeah, it's kind of amazing that the developers kind of hid this major character and this really that ended up being this really minor really neat here and there.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the classic games exchange, you have characters like Bass or Forte, and then you have Vile or Vava. And so that's why you have this rival character, which was a bit of a staple for the games. And he's also got the purple attire. So you can sort of see there's a bit of something that they tried to add on. So it's like you have this equivalent of this character in this certain timeline or this certain era, that kind of thing. So I can sort of see what they're going with. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Well, it's interesting, especially if you look at the Legends game, the first Legends game itself, because there are some callbacks to a couple different characters. Like we all know in the boat shop, Wily. He looks like Dr. Wily. I can't remember if Legends came first before NT Warrior. But I found it interesting that whenever they made Legends, they put the character Wily in it, and they show him having a patch eye. And then whenever NT Warrior comes out, they show Wily. He's got a kind of a mechanical patched eye over kind of the same spot. It's like it's interesting on some of the dynamics that they take from different things, add them into different genres.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, sure. To be honest, I've only actually noticed a parallel between the Legends Wily and the Battle Network Wily.
Yeah, and if you look at it, Legends came out first, so they had to take dynamics from Legends and put it into that game. Same thing with Legends 2, because you've got two different characters in that game that, you know, on not in any other game, but they put them in the NT universe, and that's, I think, Shu and Glide, and they're both in Legends 2. You find Shu in the Poketa Village in the mayor's office, and you know, as everyone knows, Glide's one of the air pirates that's trying to get a hold of the treasure before anyone else. And in the Battle Network series, Glide is Shu's net navvy.
Yeah, and yeah, also the twin kids that they were trying to rescue Shu, they were also put into the, I believe it's the, yeah, they're put in the anime as well as the younger brothers of Shu, if I remember correctly.
I have to look into that one. I didn't know that. There's a lot of things that you just you kind of glance over, and they put a little Easter egg here and they put a little Easter egg there, and just it's never looked at again. But yeah, definitely with the characters and stuff like that, that concept. I didn't know that character was in the game data somewhere. So it's, you know, one of the reasons why I want to do this, because you get to learn more and experience more, and everyone's take is different. Okay, so
yeah, I got a reference. I shared it on the one of our chats in the video game talk. It's these two. They were also applied into the Battle Network games.
all right, let me go ahead and expand this up, and I'll show it on the screen. So that's Appa and Da. And okay. Atsu and Tai. Okay. And that's supposed to be it's not Shu. I'm thinking of the wrong, I can't remember her name now. It wasn't Shu. I'm thinking of their sister from Legends, and it's not that, it's the girl with the pigtails. I can't remember her name now.
Shuko. Hold on, I shared the images.
No, that's not her. It's where is it? It's Glide's NetOp, and she is also in Poketa Village.
Oh yeah, she's one of the creepy looking kids. Hold on.
Yeah. And speaking of creepy looking kids, we got one helper to Gillis in chat. What's up, Antoine? Yes, her. I can't remember her name to save my life.
There you
yes. Go. And yes, she is creepy. But yeah, both concepts that they ripped from Legends 2 and put into NT Warrior. And I'll send the same invitational offer to you as I did to Draconef, Antoine. If you want to jump on in and talk, feel more than glad. It's in Robot Masters in my Discord. We're primarily talking about Megaman Legends, but I know you're also an avid old-time Megaman fan, and I'm pretty sure it's got to come up. All aspects of the Megaman universe is got to come up. So, if you want to jump in and ask questions or talk, far be it for me to stop you. But no, I'll reiterate what I did at the beginning of the stream in case, you know, for anyone's coming in the middle. KION is the person that's been working on the software to basically assemble the game textures to the 3D maps on PS1 games, and his chef is the person that is making the fan-made Legends comic, which I really want to emphasize, if you're a fan of Legends at all, if you just like the game, if you played it and was interesting, take a look at the comic, because it'll make you want to play the game again. you're just listening, doing chores. Well, fine, put on you, Antoine. I should really have a list made out of questions I want to ask. That would have made this so much easier.
Take your time.
Yeah. You back, Gen Max?
Yeah, I've been back for a while.
Okay. You have anything you want to ask? While I think of a couple more questions?
Not really. You kind of asked them all.
Well, I
was
haven't
kind of
asked.
Here listening.
I can't
I
be.
got really
That can't be
nothing.
all of them. That's only 47 minutes. We gotta go a little bit longer than that.
Just don't have
Actually, Sparky, Jim,
Yes.
I think there's one question that you mentioned was how far do you want me to take this adaptation, right?
Yeah, that's actually. I want to ask that one a little bit later, but yeah, we can get into that question now because that's a real interesting. That's a real interesting take of how far you're gonna go. If you're just gonna go over the first game, the second game, are you gonna incorporate stuff from Misadventures of Tron Bond and like from the mobile game Seven Out Islands Adventure? Are you gonna incorporate anything from that ideas or any you know? Where you plan on going with it?
Well, at the moment, obviously, as you can tell, I'm really the project's going really slow. So that's why at the minimum, well, who knows how long it'll take, but then I'd at least like to finish the first game at the events. But if I have to go through the second game or some of the events previously, there are several ways I'm thinking of doing. Either I can just put them as in just written form, like a novel, or I just handpick certain events just to draw out at most. Otherwise, it's mostly just trying to focus on just making the first game as adaptation of the first game as much as possible, since there's a lot of stuff that can be played around in it.
Yeah.
And but as for the characters like interesting characters like Glide, or you have the Digger's Guild, or the hints of the system, or and what Capcom usually does with a lot of call forwards, callbacks to their different franchises.
Mhm.
Like and I'd like to play around with that a bit as well. For example, we have some hints of the characters which have hello. Some hints of characters which I had was a bit of the classic series. You have and also the Battle Network series, which I've put some Easter eggs in some of the character parallels. So I'm just playing around with those just to make the reading experience better. I think that would be my main focus.
Yeah.
Well, I do have one. Oh, I do have one question. Before you go further in with this.
Sure.
Have you had because this game was on Nintendo? Have you had any problems with Nintendo or PlayStation or Capcom or anybody with copyright issues or pushing back and say cease and desist or anything like that, or just they've just been kind of ignoring you because you're under the radar?
A couple of things. One is because Capcom is relatively easygoing with their copyrights, as long as you're not like blatantly using their name for like a product, like you're kickstarting a. For example, so there was one case, I think like 4 or 5 years ago, when they had to C&D and Ghosts and Goblins Kickstarter, but then it's because they were blatantly using the name without the permission. But because the comic itself is basically just a fan project, and it's non-profit, and that's why I had no problems with that.
Also because I'm also saying this because Nintendo is a dick and doesn't care to make profit. They don't want you to touch anything on theirs.
Oh yeah, true. But Nintendo in this case, they were just a publisher, so that's why it's not really one of their IPs.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say Nintendo.
Yeah,
Nintendo didn't make Megaman. They didn't make the game. Now they used the platform. Capcom did for the games, but it's not like a Nintendo licensed game. It's Capcom licensed. So
well, I kind of figure as much, but sometimes even when it doesn't involve Nintendo, they like to even if it's just on their system, Nintendo likes to be a dick about things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only possible legal. Sorry. As you were saying.
Well, it's not that. It's going through and reading the game. I remember something that kind of clicked in my head reading through it because I got to reading through it, and it's like some of these terminologies don't make sense because it's not like from the game. And continue reading on. The first thing that popped in my mind is, okay, so he's changing words around and definitions around, and trying. For me, the way I thought it was like making sure it couldn't really be traced back to copyright or selling work and stuff like that. Like refractors, you call them reflectors, but again, I don't know if that's because of Japanese translation either, because I know refractor wasn't what the Japan game called it. It was something else.
Yeah, the translations, most of the translators you use are using the Japanese version as the base because, well, the main reason I wanted the Japanese version for them was, besides localization stuff aside, was mainly because there was a lot of callbacks to previous games in their translations, like purify units. I think that's the big one, is that in the Japanese game, they were called irregular hunters, which was the same term used for Maverick hunters in the X series. So that was a pretty big parallel to it.
Yeah, I remember that because that was one of the things I kind of took away from the first game, especially when you start getting into like the third subgate. You got into the third subgate and you actually started getting closer and closer to the main gate, and you started seeing all these words, terminologies, prototype info units, purifier units, bureaucratic units and stuff like that. The system.
Yeah.
Not Elysium. Elysium wasn't even mentioned in the game, but like Eden, the satellite up in space and stuff like that. And it really got me thinking about different games that came out, because you get to think about Purify units, and what they done. The description in the game is they basically hunted or exterminated or terminated rogue aberrant units that went against the system. So every Mega Man game, you have some sort of parallel to the other one, because in the regular Mega Man games, you have the Robot Masters, which, every Robot Master in the game has been reprogrammed or made by Wily, and basically taken what they were built for or and changed to dominate and take control of the world. And Mega Man came up and volunteered to fight against them and try to save the units and repurpose them if they could, or bring them back into working order. X games are a little bit different. It was a society. X joined in later on, because that's a lot of people who play the X games go, well, I mean, X is the original Maverick Hunter. No, he's not. It's like, X was not a Maverick Hunter in the beginning of it. He was just a lab assistant to Dr. Kane. And when Sigma took over, well, not took over, but he was slowly being integrated into the Hunter program, and he was like below zero. And then the events of the X Games happened, and he became a Maverick Hunter, which, in Japan, a regular hunter. So there's always some sort of takeaway or, call back to one of the other games, but they're pretty much dynamically all the same. Legends is really the only game that kind of gets away from that until like the end, and then you find out, oh, Volnut was actually this way back when, and it's a really good take. But yeah, I noticed that you changed the definitions up, and I wondered if it was because of copyright or anything like that. But later, the more I thought about it, is like, maybe it's Japanese translations, because, like I said, refractors, I think the name of the Reaverbots are different. They're not. You don't call them Reaverbots in that. You call them, what were they?
Oh, I just call them Reavers. So it's a bit
They're
it's a bit of a composite between the Japanese and the English translations. Yeah, actually, yeah. Even though I was using the Japanese version of the translations as a base, but then I still use the English versions of some of the names if I find that they'd be more appropriate because, some names are just way too Japanese. Like for surfbots, you have kobun, which basically means underling in Japanese, but kobun doesn't really sound like much in English. So that's why I thought, okay, if I need to satisfy both the English and the Japanese translation, I'll just call them surfbots because saboto, as they would call it, it's a servant robot, savanto roboto. But it's also a pun which can be hidden in there because saboru, which sounds like saboru means to slack off. So in other words, they're kind of like slacker robots in a way. So it's just trying to stick with the.
Yeah, it's kind of mark.
Yeah, it's because Capcom has a really the Ace Attorney series is that they're really big on name puns. So I thought, okay, so if Capcom's gonna write it, this is probably how it's gonna happen. So I just kind of followed that and had fun with it.
Well, I mean, and that's actually really interesting bringing up Subbox, and we'll switch gears just a little bit. And KION, if you want to ask any questions, and vice versa to Hisha to KION, whenever we start talking about some of KION's work, you guys can ask questions too. It's not just me or anything like that. It's just basically what here learning about each other and just sharing it with everyone. So feel free. If you have a question you want to ask, go for it.
No, it's mostly just with 4 people. It's kind of hard to cut in, and so as long as the conversation's going pretty well, it's a lot easier to not cut in because I think everything's pretty well been said.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too.
And if like I said, if something stands out and you got something you want to ask or you're interested about something, feel free and just if you can find a place to cut in, do it. I can tell you, and Jim Max can tell you because I don't know how many live streams you two have been on. Getting a word in edgewise, unless you try, it's hard. Especially if you
have to kind of look at the timing and get in.
Yeah, especially if you look at one of my other co-hosts that I have, like Rogue, it's almost impossible to get a word in edgewise. But that's interesting with Subbots because that's actually one of the Capcom's artist tests. If you want to be an artist or a designer for Capcom, that's one of the things you gotta do is actually draw a Subbot and get it get the anatomy, the proportions of the head, the body, the arms and legs, eyes and mouth all correct with each other, and they actually grade you on that. And if you pass that test, and I assume another battery and slew of tests that they do, you get in and be a designer artist form.
The Surfbot is a pretty good proof of concept for that because it's a simple model. It's almost like a Minecraft model, but it's got a lot of subtleties in it. It's a pretty good test to see if can these people sketch it out? Can you break it down? If you can't do a Surfbot for a 3D model, then how are you going to do more difficult?
Yeah.
Never thought of it that way, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Well, the first one I see a Subbot, the thing pops in my head, it's Lego. The Lego Men.
Yeah. And I just gonna state the obvious here, but another thing about the Surfbots is that the color scheme, the Capcom logo.
Yeah. KION is low. Okay. Well, KION's also on his phone because his computer didn't want to play nice with him, but I can always pump him up. So pumped him up 75% more. That should be a little bit better. Go ahead and say a couple words.
Say something. There we go.
I'll pump you up 200%. Okay, there you go. I can't do any more of it, so.
And then a quick thing back to the Nintendo copyright thing. Nintendo only seems to be really avid about protecting their Switch platform. I think the Nintendo 64 is old enough that they're not too worried about it.
Oh, you'd be
surprised. Old IP. I still get before YouTube kind of changed the ruling a little bit. I got hit on my install when's original Mario game getting hit from copyright from Nintendo on it, and that's the original 1986 85 Super Mario Brothers.
Just playing the game?
Hmm.
Just
Huh.
playing the game.
God damn.
That's
Wow.
back when Nintendo had the creators platform or the partners program or whatever they called it back then. And it was, it was like only in certain aspects of the video because they would clip in a portion to where it doesn't matter where you jump to what you do in the game. They would like focus out like 5 seconds of it. It's like, yep, that's ours. If you see this, claim it for us. And yeah, it's Nintendo is real anal about their copyrights, and it's
For a while there, no one was playing Nintendo games though. Because of that, no one was playing Nintendo games online, and they weren't getting much publicity. While everybody else was like, "Sure, play our games online and make content, all this stuff, and make our games popular. We don't care." And Nintendo
yeah,
lost out on that, a lot of that,
yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
they're kind of still hurting from that to this day.
Well, it was so petty too because it's like, you get publicity and you get game sales, and they were trying to get like ad revenue from people streaming. It's like,
No, they were
well,
just trying to say, "This is ours. You can't do that."
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what they were doing.
Yeah.
And you can't use
Yeah.
it to make money or anything. And then that about killed Nintendo actually for a while, because before the Switch came out, everybody was like anti Nintendo.
Yeah.
And
Lo-Fi and
Nintendo
Tyro.
eased up quite a bit.
Yeah, Lo-Fi and Tyro. Whenever Lo-Fi started doing her Pokemon stuff, Nintendo was kind of dogging at them a little bit. Then I want to say it's like the last half year, last 3/4 of a year, they've really died down from doing that. And it's unless it's like a really really brand new title that's unless it's been out for a couple months, they don't like people streaming it because to them it's you're going to ruin the story for everyone else and the
But it never
experience and
does.
stuff like
It
that.
makes people want to buy the game more and the experience better, honestly. But
But
well, yeah,
for
because
They've always
the
been
only
so.
games I play, I watch people streaming them. It's like, hey, that looks fun, and then I think what was it? Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah.
I paid like $80 for that right after it came out because like that they just looks like too much fun to pass up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Konami's were actually working worldwide to stop the YouTube videos because of spoilers. At least that's how we did. That's how we did.
I think Persona was one of the biggest ones.
And yeah. Also recently, Kingdom Hearts 3, right?
Yeah. Anything they had like had cutscenes in it and stuff like that, they really focus heavily on getting those videos taken down because you're spoiling the story and stuff like that. But it's like can't really be copyrighted. But that's also YouTube's broken platform. Same with Twitch. So there's a lot of ins and outs you gotta do if you do stuff on YouTube and Twitter, and sometimes you gotta walk on eggshells to be able to do something you want, just put out there.
Yeah.
But with that, let's go ahead and get back on topic. We'll stop picking on you here, Chef, and we'll go ahead and go KION. And so with your development of the code that you got for the program for the assembler, what made you want to go ahead and do that? I mean, just what was your driving force behind it?
It's kind of I guess I'll go ahead and do the long version of it. Is originally I liked the game Phantasy Star Online, and so with Phantasy Star Online, the original Dreamcast version, I wasn't actually active at that time, but I just heard they updated to the Winter Lobby, and then they never updated again after that for like several years. And then the sequel to that was Phantasy Star Universe, and the American version was always like years behind the Japanese version. Like the Japanese version would get updates like every month, every 2 months, like a new event, a new event, a new event, and then the English version would be like 2 years, would be like 4 years behind, and then every half a year they might add a little bit of content into it, and so people kind of started to get the idea that we need to be playing on the Japanese version or else we're gonna get screwed. And so when Phantasy Star Online 2 came out, oh my God, it's almost like 10 years or so now. I mean, it's a really long time ago now. Phantasy Star Online 2 came out. I started translating the story directly because they had the Japanese version. They announced an American version, but they didn't ever ever have a public beta or anything. So immediately we all kind of started grabbing onto Phantasy Star Online 2, and I translated the story like right away, the Japanese version, and we all created like an English patch to start playing with the Phantasy Star Online 2 as soon as it came out. Um, and then kind of translating through Phantasy Star Online 2, I kind of realized that Sega didn't really understand the original appeal that Phantasy Star Online had. And since I had access to the translation tools that someone else had given to me, it was like, okay, well, I see how the game's working. There's just files, and these files are put together and stuff like that. So I wonder about the original Phantasy Star Online. So I went back to the original Phantasy Star Online and started looking into the files and started looking into like the 3D models, because people had made tools available for that. And so most of my first development was done with Phantasy Star Online, and that's kind of where I got the bug for it. And then from there, I was really interested. My second favorite game behind Phantasy Star Online definitely has to be Mega Man Legends. So I really wanted to see if the tools I had made for Phantasy Star Online, or the approach that I learned for how to break down, how to read models and stuff like that, if that would work on a different game. And especially back in time, in the 90s was a really interesting area for, interesting time for 3D models, because it was really like, people are coming from the Super Nintendo over to the PlayStation. There was a lot of like raw, okay, how do we do gameplay in 3D models? And, it's a lot of new, exciting technology in that time. So definitely the prospect of going from Dreamcast and going back in time to PlayStation, where it's like a more raw state, was very appealing. And so from there, I got into external tools, and then I started, reverse engineering Mega Man Legends, and it was a lot harder than Fantasy Star Online, or a lot harder than Dreamcast, to be honest. But it's definitely rewarding.
Yeah, I a couple of things I remember, because I've been see. I remember I started following you first on Twitter, and it wasn't until later on I think I found his stuff like just a couple months ago, and completely blew my mind when he joined into the fucking Discord. Like, oh my god. Try not to fucking fanboy you guys, like, oh my god, I love your comic, and try not to scare him away. He's like, yeah, I gotta hold back a little bit. But
It's cool. I'm actually a very lax guy.
well, I'm glad
So
to hear
yeah, it's all
that.
cool. It's all cool. And yeah, we can just shoot. You can just send me stuff to just shoot the shit. I don't really mind. If I'm busy, I'll just tell you I'm busy. So it's all cool.
Oh, it's all
Well,
good. Like I
Sparky
said,
knows that I'm like being very reserved right now for certain reasons, because I don't want to get people in trouble.
why is that?
Oh, you know, you know that shit I like to pull.
I know. That's why your soundboard's put up.
But,
You can bring the soundboard back.
oh, no.
We won't get wood in edgewise.
No. Well, there's other reasons too, but
Yeah, but no, it's I remember whenever I started following you, because I liked some of the stuff you did, and anything Mega Man Legends related, I grab hold of, and I'm reserved talking about it online and on YouTube, because really, it's like I want to get a good format together before I actually talk about it, because it's something I really hold dear. Because I remember like going through and just trying to find information. One of the first websites I came across is like Legend Station, and it's one of my go-to for like original concept art, music from the game, sprites, screenshots, storylines, stuff like that. And they have a really unique fan base too, with a lot of fans that come in, put up some of their the fan art stories. I think they still got a story going on. It's an interactive story. Anyone can put in, and just basically different people put into the story, and it goes on. And it's real interesting to see where people have taken that. But one of the things that really caught me is I remember you were trying to, I can't remember what it was. It was for either the ruin textures or the textures on the flutter or something like that. But you end up finding like this, like several textures that's reused in different ways in the game. for different mappings on different 3D objects. And I think that took you, what, a couple months to figure out?
Let's see. There are two huge problems with Mega Man Legends that like took me a while to get around. One is mapping. Yeah, I think. Oh, I think I realize what you're talking about now. For mapping the right texture to the right model is a horrible experience on the PlayStation. If you're in comparison for the Dreamcast, each texture has a name, and then each list of textures will have a name and a number. And then when you go to the model, it would just be like, okay, here's the list for the textures, here's the texture number. And it's very one-to-one. It's just a very simple lookup. In terms of the PlayStation, they have the frame buffer. So instead of just having a unique name or a unique number for any given texture, they put it into the frame buffer, which has X and Y coordinate for where it's stored in the frame buffer. And the problem is with an X and Y coordinate for the frame buffer is any texture stored in the frame buffer can also have that same X and Y coordinate. So you have nothing unique for any given texture to kind of figure out what the lookup for each texture is. You just kind of have to, you can narrow it down and say like, okay, I searched through all the textures. Here are 3 textures that have, the coordinate that you're looking for. Which texture is it? Please select, and stuff like that. So it's just this whole, there's no one-to-one, there's no one-to-one reference for which texture or which texture should be assigned to which model and when. It's a horrible experience.
Yeah, I remember going through that, and you just add like, I can't remember how many pages, but there's a lot of like alphanumeric file names, and it's like you're supposed to find this and all this. No.
Well, yeah, I think. Yeah, especially my first tools would just like put up a list of like, okay, here's everything that could possibly be loaded into memory this time. Please select which one looks appropriate. And yeah, and that's kind of what I was switching to the save states. Although people hate me for using save states, but the thing about save states is that whatever loaded on the screen is loaded into memory, is loaded into frame buffer. So when you have that, when you have a save state, all the stuff that's displayed on the screen will have the correct texture in the frame buffer. And so that's why I switched to using save states. But then people also yell at me for that because it's like, oh, I have to go through this part of the game. I have to create a million save states. KION, why did you do this to me? It's like, please understand.
It's like, don't shoot the messenger, shoot the people who programmed the game. Right?
I'm doing the best with what I have to work with.
KION, actually, just got a question about textures. It's one thing which when I was looking at the designs in Legends, is one thing I noticed was that the flutter, basically the Cascad's airship, is that that you can, if you look at their texture for their models, that you can see that the details on the outside of the ship are completely different from the concept art. So I was wondering if this was actually a mistake that they had during development because of just how disorganized the system was. Since now that you mentioned how textures were handled on PS1.
I don't know about any differences between the Flutter concept and the actual Flutter implementation.
Yeah, sure. Hold on. I'm sharing a few screenshots. Just give me a minute.
Are you talking about like from the differences between Legends 1 and Legends 2? Or just
Actually, the models, the 3D model and the textures for the first and second games were the same, since there's small details like the position of the air vent and the windows were different and are swapped. So I just shared a couple of screenshots in the video game talk thread, and that's what I was a little curious about that. And since if you look at all the other games like Namco Capcom, they were all they all followed the concept art version, but it's only in the games where the textures were came a little weird. So I was, when KION mentioned how disorganized the textures and the mapping was on the PS1, so I was wondering if this was related.
In terms, the main technical limitation I had to work with was they only had 16 colors. So I don't think the 16 colors is the issue. I think it's more just a matter of when that.
From my best guess and the way of looking at it, I think it's just because Because if you look at, there's three different things you can look at. You can look at the in-game stuff. You can look at a lot of the concept art or original what that Capcom did. And then you can look at like some of the like the booklet art for Megaman Legends 2, because that's one of the things that really drawn me about Legends 2 was the 3D rendering of Mega Man. It's completely different than what's from the game. You figure different style and stuff like that. But if you look at the hardware they're using, they had to use big blocky textures in order for stuff to move right and be correct. And sometimes in order to get the detail that you want, you have to make them more bigger and blockier, like with the eyes on the flutter and the placement of the windows and the vents that you're talking about. It's good. You can make really detailed concept art on paper, but whenever you're going through on the 3D texturing, that doesn't really translate well enough, and you gotta do what you can do. That's why on the flutter, the eyes look close together and they're big and bulgy, and it just the detail is not there. You can tell that they like on the piping that looks like below the engine on the concept art that goes to the back. I think that is actually there in the game, but it's like just drawn on. It's not actual 3D texture. It's just drawn on to make it look like it's there. And that's again 3D textures, big and blocky. How do you make it look as close as you can to the actual concept art without just making it look horrifying with the 3D renderings that they had at the time?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think that
I guess I was
I
just
think that's
really nitpicking on it because that's because I was trying to look at which design to follow and to keep consistent, and I was just looking at it back and forth so much, so I guess it just got to my head, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a pretty good explanation. You kind of have to work with around the technical limitations that you have. Now, the Flutter texture specifically, I think it's 256 by 128 in height. So it's just a matter of what you can fit in there in that size. And then, yeah, and then, in terms of, polygon count and stuff like that. So I think I think they tried to fit the concept art as best they could within the technical limitations that they had.
Yeah, because if you look
Yeah.
at the in-game design of Mega Man himself and you look at the concept art, really the concept art looks beautiful. I mean, the proportions are there, but when you look at them in the game, and it's both in Legends 1 and Legends 2, because they kind of use the same 3D model, but in Legends 2 they were able to refine the detail a lot better than what they could in the first game. He's still big and blocky, like the hands, the hips, the shoulder placements for the body. It's big and blocky, and if you compare it to actual concept art, it's not like that. It's more slender. He's more taller in the concept compared to in the game. So I mean, at the end, you've got to walk with technical limitations.
Yeah, and I
It,
guess one thing I'd like to add is that sometimes they probably try to change him proportions. Like even with the classic games, they have to change the proportions. But it's not. It could be less technical limitation, but also for the sake of gameplay, where they want to focus on. Like for example, we need the character to have a smaller hitbox because if he's too bulky, he might get you might get a lot of hits, and it's gonna make the game experience a mess. So I think it's also a gameplay thing they have to prioritize on.
yeah.
So which to make it different.
Yeah, not only that, but it's like for the cinematics in the game, one of the things that they could have done, and I really wish they would have done, um, would have been like what they did with Legends of Dragoon, because they kind of use the same block dynamics for the in-game play in Legends of Dragoon, and the big and blocky, and they're a lot more smoothed over than what they are in Legends. But then you move over to the cinematics, and the cinematics are beautiful. They're like almost Final Fantasy quality for the cinematics. But you can't get that within the gameplay aspect because it's too demanding for the game. And it would be nice to see something like that in the cinematics, but I respect the fact that they use the same 3D textures. And the problem is you're using the same texture. Well, not texture. You're using the same 3D rendering for both in-game play, moving around, and whenever they do the cinematics. Because if you look at the mouse move and the eyes move around, it's not a 3D model moving around. It's just the changing the image of the face, and that's all they're doing. They're adding a different image on the mouth. Basically, what they would do for 2D animation.
See, I think there are actually 3 different models for Megaman. In the opening tower, the introduction is actually it's a demo model of him. I don't think he has the circles under his feet yet. So there's a unique model for Mega Man Legends or for Mega Man and then the cutscenes use a slightly higher resolution model. I think the textures for them are 256 by 256. And there's high resolution models for Mega Man, Roll, Bon, and Teasel. And then in the actual in-game models, they use a slightly lower poly count with 256 by 128 textures. So the cutscenes are not noticeably better, but they actually do use slightly nicer models.
Yeah, because you're not focusing on gameplay then. You're focusing on what's happening on the screen. Is that the texture? Is that the textures on the model, or are they actually changing the model itself?
I think the textures on the model are improved, and I think they actually put in a slightly higher resolution model. It's not noticeable if you export them and put them side by side. It's like, oh, okay, that does look a little bit nicer, but it's mostly just not noticeable.
Okay, that's good to know.
But they did put in the effort.
Okay. So, another question for you, KION. What do you plan to do with this? You just continue on as a hobby? What's your end goal for what you're wanting to do with the program that you pretty much, took for yourself, made your own, and done all this? What's the end goal for it? Because I see the potential for it. You demonstrated the potential through different things. I think what you did was ended up taking a texture model for the armor and changed it over. You made it almost look like my avatar, and I was floored with how it looked. And but like, what's the end goal?
Well, I mean, mostly it was just curiosity, because the main thing is like when you're a kid and you take a PlayStation disc and you put it in the PlayStation, you hit power on, it comes on the screen. It's like magic, it's like, it's honestly just complete magic. Why is this $200 machine, that doesn't run general programs? You put a disc in it, you hit the power, and all of a sudden this works. And then you take the same disc and you put it in your computer and you try to look at the files, but your computer has no idea how to interpret the files. So what the hell is going on that, between the PlayStation and the computer, that the PlayStation knows just how to interpret the files and display stuff on the screens, and the computer is just like, what do you want me to do with this? So that was always just a point of curiosity from when I was a kid, and it's just kind of always stuck with me of what's going on, what's the difference, why is this working, why is this not work? And so it's mostly just curiosity that I really wanted to figure out how it works.
Okay. But what's the end goal? Just playing around with it?
Well, I mean, in terms of end goals, one thing that would be really fun is, it would be, now that all the files from Mega Man Legends 1 are exported, it would be, fun to, pop up, turn on Unity and turn on or Godot or, a game engine and start putting things in there and start moving things around and start making some proof of concepts. I think Tredge is another user in the Mega Man Legends station. He's he started with Godot, and he's managed to make a lot of the basic functionality of the gameplay of the game engine work in Godot. But he kind of switched over to modding a Hat in Time or something like that. So it's kind of effort that it's kind of an amazing effort that hasn't been displayed very much publicly. So I might ask him about what he's doing, what he plans on doing with that. But in terms of myself, I would, I love to do more than anything to just kind of pop up an game engine and start working on stuff. But it's kind of hard to change hats. If I want to work on more games, or if I want to, start working on Mega Man Legends 2, it's kind of really, tempting. It's like, well, there's only one of me, so it's like, which one do you want to go for the, making the engine or doing the gameplay, or doing more assets and stuff like that. And I think just exporting more assets, doing more games is kind of what I want to do. So the programs are available; they're all open source, anyone can use them. All the assets can be exported. So I would really like to see other people kind of take up the, be able to take the assets and start putting them in projects and have fun with them.
Well, one of the things I like to see, and it'd be a monumental challenge to do, but it kind of goes on the fact of I can't remember what it was, and it was a long time ago, but I seen somebody take a polished model of Mega Man, a polished 3D model, and it looked damn good, and they incorporated it into the engine that drives Skyrim, and it was just a base model, and it was a video. I can't remember what the video was, somewhere on YouTube, but it just had him running around, jumping and shooting and stuff like that, just incorporating how it would look like in a world kind of like what Skyrim was, and it'd be a real interesting concept to see somebody do that, and probably incorporate aspects from both Legends 2. You can't really do it with Misadventures or Tron Bond. I guess you could with some of the gameplay, but the world maps ain't really idea, since it's kind of it's like a flop between 3D gameplay and then 2D cinematics. And then if you get into the Seven Islands Adventure, that's a mobile game, and it's not even really, the only thing you really have access to is like just the dungeon maps, and they're very simple and basic. As far as the actual world location and story, it goes on the same aspect as Misadventures of Tron Bond. It's a 3D gameplay, but 2D storytelling. So it'd be cool.
I think
It'd be cool to see somebody put all those elements into like one big game. So whenever you go to you go to Power On, not only could you just go to Cadillacs Island, but you can also go to like Kalinka, or you can go to some of the places. I can't remember. I haven't played Misadventures of Tron Bond ever, so I can't remember some of the town names, city names. But it's like one of those cities looked like it could be on Kimatoma Island, but it's nowhere reference, and the mapping's different, but the location, the area looks damn near similar.
Yeah, well, I think I would I would have to search through Discord to find Tredge's. Actually, wait, I might have to go dark for a second to look for some of this. But Tredge has been he modded a Hat in Time to actually use the downtown models. So you can play around with a Hat in Time, and it's actually in Cadillacs Island downtown. And Ura Damasu has pretty much exported the entire map city. Let's see, you can post this in.
Yeah. Go ahead, posting video game talk. Everything we're talking about, if you want to share it, anything interesting, go ahead and just put in game talk. We got people around here that will take it, use it, talk about it, whatever. Yeah, I seen that.
That's what it was.
Yeah. The only thing that I have a nitpick about on that, and I know it's not any of their faults because it's just the way it was generated and made. But it's like there's some things that just looks like it's offset, not placed right correctly. And it's just the dimensions of the world compared to how it's supposed to be in the game. They didn't make like Old Town and the power plant area, the main gate area, Uptown, they're all separate worlds within the game. And if you were to actually compare the actual sizes to a map, they won't ever fit together because they all overlap. That's one of the things I found a shame, but it's like, what can you do about it?
Yeah, I mean, the map I just posted. This is one thing that Ura did, and these are all one-to-one from the exports in the game. And in the few places where stuff doesn't match up, he made a few adjustments to allow them to fit together. So that's
I noticed that, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's just it's a shame that whenever more thought and detail went into making the game, they couldn't think about that. But same thing with the flutter. I mean, it takes you how many seconds to walk from one end to the flutter in the game, and then when you're inside, it's like so much more bigger. So it's you can't do it.
TARDIS technology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they were to do that in the actual size of the flutter, especially in Legends 2, that'd be a gigantic ass freaking ship.
Yeah.
Not the small.
I think it's like they were still during the early days of RPGs where all the buildings are tiny but once you get inside it's larger. That kind of, since you're like separated experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that thing at the time.
Yeah, because you can just load in an entire separate map entirely, so they don't really even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite true.
But then they get people like us involved, and it's like, the fuck. but I mean, you gotta think about it too. Who would have thought, in 20, 25 years time that somebody would do stuff like this with the game? So, especially back in the 90s and 2000s. But one of the things I really liked about the original Legends game, was you could get to every ruin, except for the Sea Tower. But you can get to every ruin on the Kylux Island without even have to go up to the surface. You can hit every place down on the ground if you had the right tooling to be able to do it. That's one of the concepts I liked.
Well, I think that's one of the main reasons I like Mega Man Legends 1 a lot more than Mega Man Legends 2, because it feels a lot more connected. You can kind of go anywhere from...
Yeah. You don't get that Legends 2. But I can understand why they didn't do some of that. Especially when they go from the... I've got mixed feelings about Legends 2. I love the story. I love where they took it in Legends 2. But to me, the game throws up more question marks than it does actually answering gameplay, and a lot of them can be real frustrating. So you got the 4 keys to the meta load. Great Legacy, whichever one you want to call in the game. You got 4 keys, and they're centralized in 4 massive, great big ruins that are sealed off. They're no access to everyone. They're a lot tighter than a chastity belt by the Diggers Guild. They've been searching for the meta load for how long, and they never thought about exploring those ruins for it? I mean, that's just one of those hiccups. You go, well, why? Because it's not. I'm sorry. It's not.
In terms of expanding the story, I'm not going to be too hard on the developers when they need to retcon something. So I'm not. It's that aspect I'll go a little easy on them. But in terms of gameplay, it kind of ends up just kind of being a world tour. Where it's like, okay, you land on this island, you do this dungeon. Okay, you go to the next island, you do the next dungeon, and then it's it's just kind of like each kind of town and city is limited to that one area.
Yeah, and it does a lot of things that invoke gameplay. So if you go through and play, that they'll reference different things from one game to another game, like in how can I put it? In Legends 1, like I said, interconnected subgates to the actual ruins, and the stated differently in both. But you can get to every ruin, and those ruins, like on Mandarin Island, if you go to the subgate that's outside the island, there's no access to the actual main ruin on the island. It's, you would think it's a concept like they had back in Legends, and in the way it was in Legends is all these were interconnected. Especially, I think what the mayor stated, too, especially they're trying to drive that into the game concept. All the ruins were interconnected, and they're probably interconnected elsewhere in other places, but they don't really go through and explore that in Legends 2. Because out of the four of them, you can't get to them. And that's just kind of drawing.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah. Actually, that's a good point. It would be really interesting if, like, let's say you were in one island and you just dug all the way to, and you came out in another part of the world, and you're just like, oh wow, okay, so this is they're connected, and it's you can imagine that's a really huge map, or there's some sort of long distance travel between them, that kind of thing, and it's really adds more element to the whole exploration thing. So even if all the islands are separate, they're all connected in some way. That kind of meta level thing.
So I put in a link in game chat. I know I sent to you earlier, Chef, but I went ahead and just shared it in video game talk. But it's from AndroidArts.com, and they kind of go into like a deep dive of the world, and they go in and they do a lot of cool concept arts of, like, diggers, what the units were, the world beforehand, trying the best to, like, what would you see in this world based off of these games. And they do a lot of good concept art, especially for like they try to incorporate like the robot masters into it, the different Reaver bots, all that good stuff. But they also go and explore different levels to the ruins themselves. And actually looking into this, it looks like they added a lot more to this since the last time I actually looked at it. But
yeah, so there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, but one of the things that I found interesting, there's two parts. The Reaverbot Bedlams, and it kind of goes through and it shows like the differences between Terra network, Elysium network, how they're interconnected with the different units, how they're interconnected with the Reaverbots, what was the Elder system, how's it all tied in. Yeah, they do a lot of deep dive into what if. And then below that, they go into what is it? The master and the systems. And they have kind of a good breakdown, just with the sketch art and stuff like that of the different systems, because above hand you have Elysium, you have the Eden satellites, and you have Terra. We know Sarah's the mother unit of Elysium, Eunice the mother unit of Terra, and you've got all these different units that do stuff. And then it goes down to the islands. You got your islands or your land structures, and you go down, you'll have ruins, and then below that you'll have like sub-cities. And that's the concept that I wish they kind of explored a little bit more in like Legends 2, or even in Misadventures Trombone. Is like, if there's these sub-cities on the ground, so more of them. What are they? Were they there for... Is that part of the Elder system? Is that part of Elysium system? Is that part of Terra system? And it goes down into like deep cities and deeper underground, and it just a lot of things that they try to explain. And it's real interesting where they go with it. It's a really good read for anyone, especially if you're into the games. For you, it might give you some concept ideas, how to implement some things if you didn't, have any idea of what this was or how to implement it or anything like that. And this is why I went to get a lot of my thinking of the actual gameplay. the actual story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's an interesting read, even for you, Keon, because it kind of takes it takes this game into a different level. Because a lot of the criticisms I hear about Legends is there's nothing there. There's nothing to the gameplay. Oh, it's kind of like a rip off of Indiana Jones. No, there's a lot more there that you can explore, and especially with like the loose ends that they left in the game. There's a lot more ways that you can take it.
Yeah, I mean, gameplay wise, or even some some small things which you actually, it's like some small gameplay things that you could actually do which aren't immediately obvious. Like in the first ruins, you first you got your buster and you've got the kick, but then if you use the kick, you can actually kick the bombs back at the enemy if your timing is good enough. So there's these small little subtle things. So like you said, I think that the developers were actually trying to think of something that's a lot more complex, but they just left the bits here and there, and they don't make it really obvious, since they don't actually put the whole you can actually kick projectiles back at the enemy as a tutorial thing. So it's something that they want you to discover for yourself, or it's not something that they want to focus on. They want you to discover again for yourself, or something like that.
Well, not even something as basic like that, just like gameplay mechanics. But I'm talking about more or less like story wise. Because I know for me, whenever you go through and you play the game, and the further you play into the first game, the more you start to realize there's something there. There's something there that's hidden, and they try real hard to keep it. The game keeps it locked away. You don't know what it is. But you kind of get if you ever make a venture into, I believe it's Uptown. Yeah, Uptown. And you happen to get into the museum and you look at the big mural painting on the wall, it kind of gives you a spoiler to the ending because it shows a blue warrior facing a gigantic monster. And it's
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
Megaman versus Juno. And it's like, what's that about? And then you go through and if you go through and you look, he starts remembering stuff in the third subgate. Like, why is he able to read ancient writing? Why does he have a feeling? Something's coming back to him, but he doesn't know why. And then it's revealed when he releases Juno. Juno knows him. Why does Juno know him? We know based on events in the second game, we know that Trigger, his ancient name, we know that he was a purifier unit, but you can also argue that he might have been a saboteur unit too, to the master. That's that's not really fully explained because you have Sarah and you have Yuna, and they have their own saboteur units, Geets and Gats, and Master. I think it's in one of the cutscenes. Sarah's making a snarky remark. Why would it? No, it was Gats. Yeah, it was Gats. Making a snarky remark to Yuna, Sarah. Why would the Master choose to have a unit like that by his side? And it's like, so is he a saboteur unit? Was he a purifier unit? I mean, did he change roles? And then we find out that he, goes to destroy the master system for the master's wishes and ends up getting into a battle with Sarah, trapped, and all this other good stuff. But there's so much that they leave loose, so many open ends. It's frustrating because you go to Calbana Island? Yeah, Cabana Island. You see a fortress there. It almost looks like one of the above ground cities from catalogs. Because it has the wall and the border around it. Almost looks like it. In the middle of it, you see one of the units from Eden satellites. One of the monoliths. And it gets you thinking, are there more than one Eden satellite? And if you play the game and you beat it and you go to the actual credit scene, it actually shows, yeah, there is. Because it shows Elysium above Terra with a bunch of little satellites around it. They look like the Eden satellites. There's so much to the story that they don't reveal, and so much that they tease you about. And then they do a plot dump in the middle of the first game and a plot dump in the middle of the second game, but they don't ever complete it. And there's so much there, it just frustrates me.
I think it's also a bit of product of the time, since the whole the planet is being observed, the planet and the civilizations observed by higher power is a really big theme back in the 90s. I mean, we have stories like another game, Xenogears, which also had a similar setting.
Yeah. But you have that, and like we were talking about this before the stream started. You have references from like Studio Ghibli. You have Lapida, Castle in the Sky, and then you have non. I can't pronounce the damn name, but
Nausicaa?
Nausicaa. You have Nausicaa, and they have a lot of telltale traits that Legends 1, Legends 2 has. Because down to the fucking dot, especially on with Castle in the Sky, you have a person that's tied to an ancient civilization. They have a special pendant that reacts to different things that's on the ground. You can argue, okay, that's kind of a colony or a reference to refractors. And I know that film came out before Legends, but I want to say that film was probably what the creators were looking on for reference and inspirations to change the Mega Man format. Because then you got air pirates. You have the air pirates in Nausicaa. Yeah, you have the ancient technology. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Baby woke up, so I need to get going. So
okay.
Thanks for having me on the stream.
Hey, nice to speak to you, KION. Anyway, also since I don't really look at Twitter so much, so I just followed you. I should have done it sooner.
Okay, and now I need to read. I'm gonna be honest. Now that I know about you, I need to read your webcomic. So I'll go ahead and read through all that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll talk to you on the different channels, and see you later. And have a good day.
All right, cool. See you guys. Bye.
Hey, see ya.
But yeah, I see the Miolia posted up. But yeah, there's so many things that you can take away from both the Studio Ghibli films and the first Legends games. And it's almost shocking to look at it. Because one of the things that's one of the things I noticed, because I ended up finally watching Castle in the Sky like over 2 years ago. And I got to watching it. And when they started going underground and explaining some stuff, and then everything that was going on is like, this reminds me of League of Legends.
Yeah, actually, when I first saw the mural, that's also since I was a big Sega guy back then as well, and it reminded me of the same thing that they had in Sonic 3.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And I think that what's interesting, and just something, I haven't actually solidified the idea yet, but if they have the mural that's shown here, and would there be different ways to interpret it? So it could be some blue guy, some blue knight who's trying to destroy a monster, or would it be a knight trying to rob a grave, like robbing ruins, and it's the monster that's trying to protect it? So, and with civilization has been expanding so much, there's got to be different interpretations, different religions, maybe. So there's a lot of ways to just see this one image. So that's that's my take on it.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, you got it correct. There is, but it's just, to me it just seems like it's a little out of place, because did that fight ever really happen? Did Mega Man fight Juno before in the past? Juno seems to recognize him. So, but Juno's so active. And we all know from the second game that Megaman was heavily damaged after battling Sarah, and Yuna imprisoned Sarah, and then kind of cocooned Trigger to heal him, and hit him around a run until like 3,000 years later. And I know it's a product of the times, and I know it was one of those KG and Fruity made the game as a proof of concept that Mega Man could be a 3D title.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And it was one of KG and Fruity's passion projects, if you look at it, but Capcom kind of like just turned away from it because it wasn't getting as much hype as like X or the original Mega Man, anything like that, or one of the other titles. So that's kind of why it was thrown to the side as it was. But then they adapt the story and they add on to the second one, and I know there's gonna be a lot of plot holes. I know there's gonna be a lot of things that don't make sense because they took a concept from a story that they made for a game and then they added on to it. But it's like they added on to it and not even thought the story out.
Well,
And that's
look at Doom. Look at Doom. Look at Doom at how it first started out, and now look at Doom today.
yeah.
Imagine if they did, the same thing with Legends today and continued Legends today. I mean, that would just look massively awesome if they did it right. But
Yeah, I think one of the things that they would have to do, and it probably would be in Capcom's best interest because there is a cult following for Legends, and it is just as big as any of the other Mega Man games. It's just one of those. Yeah, it didn't sell very well at the time, but now people love it. People want it back. People want more because it's an interesting story that leaves off a cliffhanger, and that's
a lot
one
of
of the
people
things.
played it on 64 is why.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Really?
widely known on PlayStation. Here.
Well, a lot of people in America, yes, because it was more popular on 64 than it was on PlayStation, and that's. I first played the game on 64. I never played it on PlayStation. I didn't know it was for PlayStation, and it was one of those. It really got the noggin jogging because the way the gameplay was, especially at the end, they say to be continued, and it's like, is there a secondary game to this? And the naming scheme they really fucked up because if you really enjoyed the game, but you didn't have access to like what we have now in the web, you couldn't really look it up. So back in the time is, well, what's the second game for it? And nobody would really look unless they notice the similarities. Oh, this is basically Mega Man Legends. Because I actually thought it was Mega Man 64, then Mega Man Legends, and Mega Man Legends 2 back when I was a kid. And then when I finally got whole Legends, I was disappointed, but also excited because, oh, it's just Legends. Oh, it's Legends a lot better.
You liked it?
No.
You did.
Yeah, you said.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just a bit quiet since I was trying to go through the developer notes. And according to the game director, he said the whole concept of the Legend series was that they're trying to get away from all the other previous games. They try to make it more abstract entry in the game, in the franchise.
Yeah.
So that's why we have this whole Ghibli and sort of 90s anime inspired world building. Unlike the whole linear style of technology and conflict between man and machine, that kind of thing. And they just changed it and I think I mentioned it before, but they also have a lot of influence from the Tatsunoko cartoons, like Gatchaman or especially Yataman, with the whole villain trio, the big guy, the female leader, and the tough guy kind of trio. And they get blown up at the end of every episode, but you feel bad for them. That kind of setting.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of the inspiration from the Tatsunoko series.
Mm-hmm. You could possibly argue Pokemon a little bit on that one.
How much did you hear that?
Just faint muffling.
My God.
Something about we won't tell.
Never mind. We'll just leave it there.
We heard something about your wife asking, do you want the strap on tonight or not?
Well, that's fine. I don't care about that. Comes
But,
in, she knows I'm on this, and she does this every time. She's like, "Oh, I forgot." I'm like, "No, you didn't." It's like this is what awaits you, Sparky, in marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah. Also, there's another thing about the world setting, because this was before the Zero and the Z series of the games, and the whole idea is that they say that the Dash or Legend series that takes place thousands of years after the X series. So they have some sort of idea there, but they could have just been putting a timestamp on it just to say, oh, a lot of stuff has happened, and they try to distance it on time wise. So whether it's actually the same timeline or not seems inconsequential, at least at the time when they were pitching the idea.
Well, there's been a lot of videos and theories about that one. There's a lot of good videos actually on YouTube about that. And there's really no way to put a chronological time order onto it, because basically you got 3 different worlds, and they have to be separated down into 3 separate worlds. You can argue that Legends would be incorporated into the Megaman, Megaman X, Megaman 0, and ZX series. You can argue that one. You can say that that's like so many thousands of years into the future from that one. But there's a lot of dissimilarities too, and a lot of things that don't really make sense. It would be feasible, but there's also a lot of things that just don't click into place. In the way it's mostly interpreted is you got the Mega Man, the X, the Zero, and ZX series. That's its own one world chronological timeline. You have the Legend series, that's its own thing. And then the Battle Network and the Star Forces. Star Forces can be argued it's its own thing also, but kind of runs reminiscent to NT Warrior. So that's its own world also. So you got 3 different universes. We'll just say that for the Legends franchise itself. Well, not Legends, but the Mega Man franchise itself.
Yeah.
Or you just try not to think about it.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like trying to go up to someone and it's like, okay, we want you to take and put into chronological order all the events from Robotech, Macross movies, and all the other Macross shows. You can't do it.
Oh no, you couldn't. There's so much.
The best thing that they do is in Macross. I think it's Macross 7, and they get a excuse me, and they kind of get a timeline fashion of how it goes, and that's about the best way, because in that one you'll have 6 different worlds, because the Macross movie, the first Macross movie, is its own thing. You can argue it runs parallel to the Robotech series, but a lot of differences. Macross Plus, yes, it's also a part of the Macross series. You get into Macross 2. Macross 2 is its own separate thing that doesn't follow Macross 1 or Macross Plus. It doesn't even follow into the Robotech series. And then all the other Macross shows are out there, kind of run reminiscent to the movies and then the shows themselves. So it's just a lot of developers and creators having fun with the world, telling their own aspects of it. So it's kind of the same thing with Mega Man, just not as convoluted.
Yeah. I think one thing that has to be mentioned, a very common, people say it's very common in the Zex. By the time the Zex, the era rolls out, is that they have the whole idea that machines and humans are almost indistinguishable from each other, which might play into the whole legends of the whole carbons idea, which is something that's been brought up a lot. But there's also a lot of back and forth on this. So, but like you said, in the end, how much does it really matter?
It doesn't unless you're just, OCD. And then
Well, yeah, I guess.
for that, there's no cure for that. So, but no, that brings a couple other topics and questions we could talk about. But for that, I gotta go grab another drink. Gen Max, you want to take over for like 2 minutes,
Try.
please?
Yeah, we'll try. I'll bring up the soundboard.
Oh God. Please do not drive our guest away.
I won't drive our guest away. But Sparky,
Okay, be back.
Yeah.
Sparky,
Yeah.
Sparky, don't fuck up. Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I spoke. Oh. Yeah. You finished watching the latest season of Machine Bridge, right? Let's us off topic a bit.
What show? Machine what? Sorry, I didn't hear it.
Machine Abridged. The FF7 thing.
Oh yes, FF7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been so far. The next season comes out. I watched this last season. Yeah, it was really good. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's,
You're gonna have to answer to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we mentioned it before the stream started. Interesting parallel with the Castle in the Sky and the Megaman Legends series is that the male and female leads have the same voice actors with each other, respectively. So it's one of those many parallels. And I'm just going through the art book, the concept art book for the Legends 1. And it shows a lot of the. There's also a concept art for a floating island concept that they had, but they never implemented. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of Ghibli-inspired designs and concepts that have been thrown around since they wanted to make it really abstract.
Oh, I'm back.
Hey.
All right.
We can also throw up another one into that one. House Moving Castle. Because look at a lot of the architecture of the machines and stuff like that. And compare them just a little bit to some of the machines you see in Legends.
In what sense? Like how they have whole huge, bulky, very distinct silhouettes designs.
It's very skewed. I mean, you can make the argument that one or the other kind of got some ideas, but it's just like how some of the warships look in House Moving Castle. You can almost argue they kind of look like what Soccer Bottom will look like, or just some of the machine, just the designing of it. I mean, you can argue that it looks the same to a point, but again, it's got that Ghibli flair and Legends. They go more often to like a steampunk look. So I'd say you couldn't even bring up Castle in the Sky because that's more blimp-like. More like hot airship like. So just something you can look at and kind of compare the two and go, they look similar almost.
Yeah, I'm just going through a lot of the different art from Ghibli, and yeah, I think there's also a big emphasis on that. It's even though like I said, steampunk is mechanized, but at the same time, there's still a lot of nature. There's a lot of a natural feeling to them, so it doesn't feel like it's like cyber. It's not like we're going as far as cyberpunk, like Standalone Complex, Ghost in the Shell, or what other shows are there? We're not talking like a hard mecha like Photoms or Megazone 23.
You can argue the concept for like Zoids almost, like the Railkeens. They almost look like what was it? The sulfur bottle. Some attributes. You can take away all the ships and legends and all the airships and legends and look at them and go, they almost look like flying fish. They are representative of some sort of animal.
Yeah, definitely fish in this case, or waterfowl, like in the case of Glide, which look like ducks and birds.
Yeah, and then you have the Gussel Shaft, which looks like a giant pufferfish. And then all of Tron Bond's machines almost look like crabs of some sort. Because she's very crabby.
Could be worse.
Got crabs.
But they have a real unique perspective to them. And that can go up into another topic. Like now we're just talking about concepts of the world and stuff like that, which is always fun. But like I wonder what gave them the idea to use refractors, crystalline energy. It makes you wonder, what was the concept for that, and how far could you take that?
It's you mentioned Castle in the Sky as one of them, but I think another one which is really big inspiration. Maybe an inspiration would be Nadia, the Gainax animation. With the whole underwater, the whole idea of Atlantis, how they use it as a power to take over the world, power airships at some point, submarines, underwater exploration, and there's a secret war between the two factions.
Yeah, that Stargate, a couple other ones that they all delve into that realm, but you think, oh, it's just. They throw it in there. You think they throw it in there. But they actually go through some links to kind of explain it. Because if you go through the library in the game, in Legends, they actually have a detailed explaining of it. And it's that they even got a name for it. And they use Helicon technology. Halcyon technology. Is basically what they name it in the game, I believe. And it's Halcyon is also another abbreviation that they use within the world. Because it's Dash stands for Dig Atlas Adventures in
Halcyon Days.
Yeah. Halcyon Days, yeah.
Yep.
So they make a reference to that in the English version of the game in the library, but that's all you get from it. And they go into kind of explaining how the refractors generated energy and stuff like that, but it's unknown what it came from, how they were made.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing we know is they use the refractors as a type of currency in the game, and a way to power small to large items.
And yeah, not to give away too much, but one of the inspirations which I felt for the whole energy source in different forms, but they all look the same with the power crystals, is also from the 1991 OVA Giant Robo.
Interesting.
Where all the world's power sources have all been converted to this really highly efficient energy source, except for the Titan the robot, which runs on nuclear power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't really explore much into other energy sources into the Legends verse. I mean, you don't have. It doesn't look like that they have internal combustion engines, although you can argue that they do, but everything's driven off of refractors, a type of, energy that's given off by the refractors themselves. reason why that the world's developed and why they had to have diggers to go down and harvest these crystals to be able to power their devices. But it's a really unique take. I just wish that they had more. I'm one of those persons. I like to have detail and stuff. I like to have like a dictionary of everything. I want to know explanations of how it walks and stuff like that. I know sometimes in world building you can't do that because if you do it, one, it takes away some of the mystery behind it. But two, then you start getting into contradicting yourself within the actual world if you don't get something correct.
Yeah, which is I think this is also a this is also a reason why there's a lot of a show don't tell, where they just they like to have the viewers make their own interpretations of what goes on and how things go, well, how things happen. I mean, there are advantages to both methods, but if we're doing like a hard science or something that's you can really get into a lot of depth. But which is why if I had to do a lot of in-depth stuff, I would compromise and instead of just saying it explicitly in the game, I would publish it as a document or something as like some supplementary material, that kind of thing. At least that's how I did it so far.
Yeah, I noticed that because for the longest time on your website, you had a definition section, and it's very, how can I say, skimp on stuff. And because I remember I went there to, try and learn a little bit how you implemented everything into your working of it. And I don't want to say I was disappointed, but it's like, well, he probably hasn't got around to it. But it's really interesting how everything is put into the type of dynamic within the game. Because, okay, these refractors power stuff. How do they power them? What's, how does it work? And
Yeah.
Another concept. It's the only Mega Man game that if you defeat a boss, you don't get the power. Well, NT Warrior was like that until they introduced Cross Soul.
Oh, the cartoon, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Didn't
yeah.
they implement that in one of the other games? It's like Battle Network 4 and 5. They started getting into Double Soul.
Yeah, in a way, but in the earlier games, they still had still had something like equivalent of summon chips where you can get that certain boss you defeated's attack and just to perform a one-off move before disappearing. So in a way, kind of like getting their powers, but not to the same extent of actually adapting their ability attributes like from 4 onwards.
Yeah. But they had that in NT Warrior, but in Legends it's like it's one of the only games you don't get special weapons from defeating robot masters or bosses or anything like that. You get them by collecting different technology and roll assembles them and puts them together into different weapons. And it's one of the more frustrating things in the game, but it also puts that dynamic in. It's more, I wouldn't say realistic, but it's more, I can't bring the term from it for it. But like in the regular Mega Man games, he gets a boss's power and he can switch between any one of the 8 powers he gets. Legends, you can't do that. You have to go back to roll and have that weapon equipped.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't like about the games as well because it felt like padding to me. Since you basically, you need a drill. Oh, you have to go all the way back, change the drill, go back to that spot, drill the hole, and you have to switch to different. You have to get the grenades now, and you just have to switch back and forth. Well, it's probably not literally like that, but I remember there's a lot of backtracking if you wanted to 100% the game.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
That was the one problem I had with the game too back in the day. But I did actually after a while I learned how to surf on. I don't know if the surfing was different on 64 PlayStation, but I learned how to surf like to everywhere where you were using that speed shoes or whatever.
Yeah.
can't remember what they're called, but I used to use that. I got so good at that I could make turns on a whim.
Yeah, I had
I used to play that game so much.
I had trouble with that whenever I got to emulation. Jim Max was there for. I think it was Jim Max that was there for me.
Emulation
When I
looked like it was a pain in the ass because emulation it looked like the controllers were really stiff.
They were, because I remember being able to go through like the races within downtown of the game,
Yeah.
and you had to use your skates and stuff like that. I had that down pat. I could pass it. I could beat it, no issue. But with the controls on emulation, they just weren't smooth. It had a little bit of a delay, and the reaction wasn't like back in the PlayStation. Because after that, I ended up hooking my PlayStation up and going back and actually doing those back on the PlayStation. I had no trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, I imagine you did because I noticed like, why are you having so much trouble? You should not. It's easy, and I kind of figured it had to be the emulation at that point.
The control, I don't know what it is about controller, because I've been going through and playing Legends 2, and I've got to get back into playing that. I know JoJo in the Discord's really wanted me to pick the game back up and continue on with it, and I haven't had time. But going through and like, one of the things I like to do is I like to circle strafe. That's one of the easiest ways to defeat the bosses in any of the Legends games. Circle strafe them.
You just use the use the skeet shoes and
I can't do
boom.
that.
You can't do that.
I cannot do that in Legends or Legends 2 on emulation. I can do it if I go one direction, but the controls mess up if I go the other direction. I have not been able to figure out why. I tried messing with the control schemes, the layout, the sensitivity of it. Because using a PS4 controller for that game, I have to go through and use a Bluetooth adapter for it to work. Then I have to use a controller interface to change the controls over into a format that the PlayStation 4 game can interpret, controller that Windows can interpret, and then that is plugged into the emulator. And there's a lot of things that has to go through. It's just I haven't been able to figure it out. Because I remember one of the biggest things I had to fight with on the emulation was video stuttering. And it took me 6 months to go through the programming and the settings and different video adapters in the emulator for the video to work correctly with the audio. It was playable, but you get to like the cutscenes like after the first run, and it pissed me off because in order to test this, I had to go through the entire first floor of the boss, get it into the cutscene for the flutter to see if I fixed the issue or not. And what would happen was you go through and you start having the flutter go through and the animations, and it start staticking out the sound, it start popping, the video would start skipping here and there, and you get to him talking, and it's real funny listening to Roll, and it's just talking, she goes, just stutter looping for like a second or two, and then moving on. And it took me 6 months to figure out what the issue was, and it was one setting that I kept bypassing.
Which one was that?
It was something in the codec for the video plugin I was using. Because in the EPSXE emulator, you have to upload everything yourself. You can download the emulator, but it will not be playable. You have to download the sound plugin, you have to download the video plugin, and you also have to download the BIOS for the PlayStation. So either you got to go online and find the BIOS somewhere, or have a PlayStation and a chip reader and actually pull the coding from the BIOS off of it to plug into emulator in order to work. In order for that game to work right, there's one particular revision of the BIOS you have to use, one particular video plugin, one particular sound plugin, and they have to be set all correctly, especially with the timing, the hertz, the speed, everything. If you don't have those set up correctly, as you go along in the middle of the game, it starts going out of sync and desyncing and just causes all sorts of errors and bugs. So,
I see.
not my first choice to want to play the game, but it is one of my only choices because, yeah, I could have plugged in the PlayStation and I could have ran it through my video capture card. But I didn't want to do it because the quality wasn't there. I didn't like the way the quality looked on the PlayStation because I can get it to look so crystal clear on emulator. It's almost like
Yeah, I hear you.
I have to say the PlayStation 3 is a lot better, and it does everything a lot better without having to go through much setup or walk arounds to get it to walk. The problem is, I have a PlayStation 4, I have a PlayStation 3, and the PlayStation Network, it's not allowed for the PlayStation 4.
Think they'll rectify that for the PlayStation 5?
I don't know. I'm hoping that they do something with the Legacy collections. Maybe,
yeah. I
maybe
guess.
they will. Because, have you played Mega Man 11 yet?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I think I just cleared hard mode. Yeah.
I haven't gotten that extreme yet. But have you noticed a little Easter egg that they put in Blaster Man stage?
Which one? I can't quite remember.
They had the support vehicle from Legends 1 in it.
I don't think I don't think I noticed that.
Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. LED. I had it saved somewhere, but I don't even know where it is right now. But I know you can look it up online somewhere. And it's a little Easter egg they put in, but it's the R&D vehicle from Mega Man Legends, and it's one that you can blow it up. I think is what it is. Oh, here it is. Let me see if I can copy link address, put it down. I'll put it into video game talk. Yeah, there it is. If you click on it, you'll see it.
Yeah. Never really paid attention to that. Huh.
That's one of the first things me and Solwyn noticed whenever we live streamed it. And it's like, oh my god, it's a support vehicle. And there's a lot of different Easter eggs to Legends in the games. Like I think it's either in 03 or in 04, and it's in one of the boss's stages. But you'll see the Vivziepop eye and things that look like refractors throughout the stage. And
I think that was free. Yeah, it was free. I think it was a magma plant, and they mentioned that's how they create these power crystals.
Yeah, and it's actually more interesting when you go through it because I mean, if you look through some of the bosses in the Mega Man Zero, for instance, they almost look reminiscent to Vivziepops. Because they have the telltale signs of what Vivziepop look like. They have one solitary red eye. And that's one of the features I don't like that they changed in the second game. Because it's like, oh, well, is there a Vivziepop now? Because that's one of the things that was telltale. Everything for a Vivziepop was it had that single eye. And it was so telling. And they kept it with some of the other bosses and the other Vivziepops in Legends 2, but they kind of got away from it because, like the Hakus, the basic Vivziepops you see in Legends 1, they changed it from a single eye to a to 2 eyes.
Yeah, they changed it to 2 dots.
Yeah. And it's like, why'd you change it? There's a lot of things that they did.
Yeah, I thought at first when I saw the design changes, I thought it was like a regional thing, like Kalinka's version of these protocols were a bit were different looking, but at the same time without the whole eye thing, it's sort of like they're telltale, like the calling card thing. So yeah, if it were up to me, I would try and keep them, even out, make some of the visual changes to the different types, but at the same time keep the eye. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, and and there's other rewards in the Legends too that keep to that reference. What was it? There's some of the smaller riverbots. You have the I know the was it the Troglodyte riverbot? It had 4 eyes on it on the bottom. If you looked at it real close, there's a lot of them that keep to the aesthetic as what they set to the first game, but they made a lot of changes that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And what do? You can't really do anything but cite it, critique it, and move on to something else. And let's change topic to you said something about carbons earlier in the game, and we know that's the name that was given to all the people on Terra and by Juno, and they kept on with that. And you hear any ancient talk, they refer to the people as carbons, and I can't remember what else. There's other aspects, other movies, other games, I think, that use that same terminology, but I can't remember what ones it was now.
I'm not sure. I don't recall carbons as like word for word being used in the other games. I might be wrong, but if there's not even in
the Megaman franchise. I'm talking about like different franchises, different games, different movies, and TV shows. I've heard it used. I can't remember what it was.
If I may add to it, in the Japanese version, they were called an interesting name. They called decoys, which was an interesting way to put it. By decoys, meaning they're kind of like recreated humans, or they're humans which are put in place of actual humans. Or if they're decoys, then what are the decoys for? Or is it just another of those Japanese naming things?
That's a good point too, because it's because they go through and they implement this type of system and stuff like that with the first game, and it's an interesting concept. And you have Juno as a bureaucratic unit over Catalog's Island. One of its main jobs and functions is to maintain a population count census type thing on the island. If it gets too overpopulated, wipe out, start again. Because we know in the game that this disaster has happened multiple times, and it's not anything's really known about it. And then we find out it's called carbon reindustrialization, and it's like they take that concept and they put it into Legends 2. It's like, okay, it's a worldwide carbon reindustrialization, and then again, this is where it comes into loopholes and things missing, and the continuity between the two is just not there, because we know in Legends 2, okay, they go through the carbon reindustrialization program, and that's meant to be done whenever all actual humans are gone, and it takes them, replicates them, and brings back the original humans. Does it do the same thing in Legends? We don't know. Is it just, what is it for? And that's just one of those things that we'll never know unless they, make a free and make a good story to it. And
Yeah.
that's another thing that it got me thinking about, because you're making this comic book and you're wanting to stick to the source material as you can, but you're also throwing stuff in there that's, either the developers left out or something as a calling to, your own interpretation of it. How would you get around that? Like, say, okay, you went from Megaman Legends to Legends 2. There's a lot of these things that I know, if you want the story to be good and interconnective solidly, you have to kind of tie them together and go through and explain it. Otherwise, it's okay, this doesn't make sense. How would you go about doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, just off the top of my head, one of the main things which I wanted to bring into the first game would be the existence of the whole guild, the Diggers Guild, which is basically those people who are in charge. But in the adaptation, it's I gave them a slightly different role, so they're a bit more like a overseer, like a human overseer, kind of like a Patriots in Metal Gear. So they're kind of like this, in a way, shadow organization-like kind. That's the way I wanted to see it. So, for example, the events that happen in the first game might have some weight to their actions, and in the second game, how would this play out? So you have different factions going against and working with each other at different times.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's another thing too. They don't really have a good explanation in the second game of what the Diggers Guild is. We know it's a kind of a stopgap, just to prevent anyone really nilly from going into the ruins, unless they are certified and able to get into the ruins. It's like the ASC equivalent to automotive. It's what the Diggers Guild is for diggers. And that's another thing, is like how to work that out, how to set all that up, and what's a good story for it. Because my takeaway from it, whenever I seen the Diggers Guild, one thing that popped in my mind was the what is it from Avatar, the White Lotuses. That's kind of how the Diggers Guild looked to me in Legends 2. It was kind of like the White Lotuses in Avatar.
Which Avatar? Sorry, I'm not familiar with.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, sorry, I've been meaning to watch that one for a while. So I'm not quite familiar with it, but at the same time, I sort of get I sort of see what you're getting at.
The White Lotuses were basically a secret society that kept order and maintained order, like behind the shadows, without, they were their own entity. That's the best way I can put it, unless Gen Max has a better interpretation than I do. But yeah, it's real interesting to see how that would come about. But prototyping for units. That's one thing that we don't get a really good definition on. It's like, what's a prototype info unit? What is an info unit? We don't ever see that reference ever again in the games.
I think I really have to go through the Japanese version once again, because there's a lot of terms that, like I mentioned at the beginning, that there are a lot of terms thrown back and forth, but how much weight those terms actually have to the bigger picture doesn't really stick, because they're not referenced again, or they're just simply not relevant in the context of the story. Yeah. At least as far as we know.
Well, to me, and that's one thing I've been interested in, because like in Dash and Legends, we pretty much established they've got different wording, different terminologies. They mean different things, and if they don't mean different things, they have a different reference to what they go to, like with carbons and decoys. You can look at carbons, okay, it's a human being, or it's an artificial human being from what they said. But in decoys, that, like you said, could mean something different. It could mean 2 or 3 different things. To them, a decoy could be the same thing as what fake would mean. Fake human. But that's one of the things that I would like to see is like somebody put together a dictionary or just a termination of like, okay, in the US and the Japanese version, because I can't read Japanese. I wish I could. But I can't read Japanese, so I can't do a lot of translations, and it's real hard to find translations like that of what they explain, of what they mean and how they explain. So like info units. Prototype info unit. That's the name that they threw on in the English version. Did they just throw it on as some sort of fancy term? Or did it have a different wording and meaning in Japan that led to something else that might be referenced in one of the other 3 or 4 games that they have out? Because, okay, prototype info units. We know they lived in the subcities in the Legends game. What impact is that? What is info units? Are they basically lesser versions of what like the Saboteur units are? The Purifier units, the Bureaucrat units, the Murder units? Are they like a lesser form? No, you got Robot Masters in the Megaman games. Are they just like the peon robots? What are they? We know the prototype in the US version, but does that mean he have something else? I think that'd be real interesting to see somebody actually go through and reference all that. Because that actually might make a clearer picture and better referencing points for the story as, even for your story, going forward on it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I learned from looking at history and actual real life history and cultures is that sometimes the definitions change to mean the same thing. Like for example, the so-called what you mentioned before about the prototype units, it might be just called Robot Masters back then. So maybe if you call it one thing I could off the top of my head, one thing I could try and interpret, I could just present it is that when Juno's talking about these units or another character, and you show silhouettes of the Robot Masters for the previous from the classic series, so you can sort of say, oh, so that's what they're talking about. It's of course it doesn't whether it's canon or not, but you just got to keep consistent for adaptation, and I think that's what matters in the bigger scope of things.
Yeah. And see, that's one of the things that I explained before that I was going through and I was wanting to make a story and adaptation to the story myself and kind of bring about of the what a third game was or what a third game would be. Going through and telling the story. Okay, he got off the moon. What about this elder system? How do we go through and how do we incorporate that? And one of the things that I came up with was, I took from a lot of sources, and for me, it's not like I'm copyright infringing anything like. It's not like I'm turning around selling this stuff. So I use any reference I could think of. Like I use stuff from Macross. I've used stuff from Code Lyoko. I use stuff from the other Mega Man games and stuff like that. I introduce concept ideas for like we know in Mega Man Legends 2, Sarah, she's able to morph and shape her form into something else. It's not like in Legends 1. You destroy Juno somewhat, he plops into another robot body and starts bashing you with this tiring Colossus going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But in Legends 2, you see the concept of shape changing. Not, just, okay, changing one thing over something else. You see Geats and Gats transform into the Reaverbot forms, into the Bud Reaverbots. You see Sarah transform from her first stage battle armor to her second stage battle armor. And it's even shown in some of the other Reaverbots, like the I call him the Walking Tiki Man. But you see them on Forbidden Island, and you see them in the ruins of Salcata. They're just walking around. You shoot them, and they morph and transform into these horrendous skull-like things that look real fucking terrifying once you shoot them. Oh fuck!
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But it's like taking references like that and like adapting it to his armor and stuff like that. That's stuff that I looked at. Like okay, having the concept of like his Buster. How does his Buster work? Does he does it morph? Does it change? Is it an adapter that puts onto his armor? I mean, how does his that's one of the things that's not explained, because we know he is a type of human. We know he's a type of android. I really even know, because he adapted a civilization so freaking good. Nobody knew he was anything else but just another person. Yeah, he was found in a ruin, but he's a person. It's not like he's a mechanical robot. We know he was found as a baby. He grew. Same thing with the other units. Sarah was able to transplant a conscience into not Sarah. Una was able to transplant a conscience into Roll's mom, and able to save her because of what was it? I think they brought up nanobots or something like that. I think. I can't remember the term they used, but I think it was like nanobots. Yeah, she transferred so much over to Roll's mom to save her that she was not able to function in her body no more. So, and you know what, Dragon? That is a good point. There is a real connection to that in the game. He says, I thought most of the humans were part machine. And, that's a good theory, because you see a lot of people like that, like Teasel and Bell. You see with the mechanical eyes and adaptation, stuff like that. But Joe and his mechanical arm, and they bring a lot of references like that into Misadventures of Tron Bond. But that's not exactly how it is. I mean, in that world, they can adapt machine to humans pretty simply, it looks like.
Yeah, kind of like a Full Metal Alchemist with the automail and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. To the same extent to a point. So it's like, okay, we know Megaman is human. We know that he wears a type of armor, like with his Buster gun. Does it transform? Is it an adapter that fits onto it, or is it just his Buster and he doesn't have his arm out? I mean, that's one of the things that it's real frustrating in the game, because in one part of the game, okay, he's got his Buster out. In another part of the game, you're walking around, he's got both hands, and it's like, and then in Legends 2, you see him out of his armor. He's human to a point. It's like, how do you want that concept in?
Yeah,
and that's one.
I think
that's one.
Yeah, the hello.
Yeah, you're still there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the way I saw it is because according to the I'm looking at the concept art again for reference, is that they've basically designed Rock as basically kind of like a toy, like an action figure, where you can just swap parts back and forth. But I'm just looking at the phrasing here, just getting into linguistics, but it's that it doesn't really talk about it as is his body actually able to switch out in canon, or is it just a design idea that they had? I have to look at it in more detail, but I think it was left rather ambiguous at the time. But
I think it's more or less armor.
Yeah.
To me, that's the way it looks like. Because you look at Glide, look at Teasel and stuff like that. They were somewhat similar armors almost.
Yeah. It's it's an interesting, as much interesting idea it is for the carbons or the decoys. They're able to swap body parts back and forth, but there's got to be there's got to be a limit to how much can be done, and also It's if you think about it, it's kind of morbid, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's really switching body parts back and forth. I think the term I used was easily adaptable. Like, because you look at the society, you look at the technology that's referenced and shown in the game, and it's almost low tech, high tech, somewhat, but not enough to really go, okay, is this okay? It's real low tech technology. How can they attach machinery to a person? How can that person control it? It goes into one of those concepts and ideas. So that's why I think I've seen it. Hey, Dragon.
Hey,
Hey, Draggy.
Um, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, well, I have muted
Hello.
myself so I didn't just, you know.
Oh no, you're good. You can jump anytime. We're having a blast talking, and we're probably gonna wrap this up in about the next 20 minutes because I know you've been on for a while and you probably have things you need to get done. Hit shift, so.
yeah, but yeah, I'm having fun talking about it. It's it's a great refresher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like one of the main questions I had because, like I said, the concept I had was Roll being the quote unquote master engineer she is would, you know, she'd look for some way to adapt technology, especially if some way to help uh, Megaman out. Right, she would do it any which way she could, and you see that with all the weapons she builds. So,
Yeah.
I mean, does she do that with his armor, and does she incorporate some of the stuff into his armor? So it's like, is it because one I played with was like kind of like the battle chips from Battle Network, something to that akin, because you have the buster parts that you can add in or add out of the buster to make the buster more powerful. So is it is it something that the armor changes? It can change, it can morph to a point to where he wants his gun now, he can use it. Same with his special weapon, because if you go for and you look, you can equip and de-equip his weapon in the game, his special weapon. So you can take it off anytime. So it's like, okay, it's not something that has to go to roll to be changed. He could change it himself. But to what extent? Is it that his armor morphs to change it, or is it not? They don't go into the game. So it's like an interesting concept out there that I thought would be interesting. You can use in a story like what I was making. Because one of the scenes that stands out to me, they did it in I want to say it was Dreamcast. Super Adventure Rockman, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And he was fighting against Raw Moon. And they took that same concept, they put it into the Archie comics also. And he had to use a double buster in order to, defeat him. And that's a real interesting concept, especially, bringing that into the Legends verse. Because you've done, I think you did it in the prologue, with damage to his armor and power source and stuff like that. And I really like that take on it. So what if, for me was like some other enemy in like he would have to face in the future. You have to induce a double buster, but he doesn't use it because it puts a strain on his power source, and it's one of those one shot you're done things. That would be something interesting to see in a story. And I thought about that for yours. I mean, whether you use the idea or not, I don't know. It's whatever, but it's like it'd be cool to see like the final battle with Volnut and Juno. and that's like one of the last ditch moves that he has to be able to, defeat Juno, because in the game he was getting his ass kicked.
Yeah, and actually, the exploit in the game in the Legends games where if you can't like press forward or back while firing, you can basically spam shooting.
Yeah.
And it basically bypasses the whole energy stat. And that was kind of the thing that I was trying to implement. I was just trying to show off, and that's how it causes Buster to short out, because it's kind of like a game punishment thing that you're trying to, go over capacity, and that's what Fuse blew and basically stopped the Buster from being destroyed. Which is the reason why I did it was because I wanted to make the Buster basically weapon that can fire indefinitely, but only in bursts, as a unique weapon in the context of the story.
Yeah,
and
because
the interesting question is,
weapon.
what happens if another character has it, and how would things play out then? That's something I want to explore.
No, I'm definitely interested. And it's like I said, I can't remember why I left off. I think I left off on chapter 3, because it was right before he was just walking up to the Blumbears. I think that was the last chapter I actually read on the story.
Chapter 2. Yeah, chapter 2.
Chapter 2, yeah. So I've been out of the loop for a little bit. And it's one of those, I was waiting to pick it back up and read it. And
cool.
I think that's whenever I ran across you again on Twitter, because I had seen somebody retweet one of your posts. That comment's still being made, because I thought it was it was postponed for a time, but no walk was really being done on it. So I'll check on it later. And I really got to pick back up again and read it and see what you've done so far. But
I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Since we got a new person, Dragonuff, the thing I've got on my channel and stuff like that. Dragonuff, this is Head Chef Dragonuff. He's somebody pops in and out. He's with GNF Network. Also does stuff with me on Sundays. He's a little bit of a Legends fan. Head Chef here he's made his own web comic. Basically a fan-made comic for Megaman Legends, and it's a real interesting read, especially if you like Legends and you like the comic format. So you might actually get a kick out of it.
I'll have to take a look at it.
But if he had basically just right now talking about Legends, and if I come up with something that I can cross-reference to his story and ask him about, juicy details, I that's what I've been doing. But if you have any questions, feel free to bring them up.
No, I just listened to all your theories, and through the vast things I've looked up and kind of studied some varying theories and thoughts on these series myself.
Okay, you want to elaborate? Well, you want to talk about it? I mean, it's.
I don't know, because I mean you did mention that your show was coming to. You were wrapping it up, so I didn't know.
I said we're wrapping about 20 minutes or so. I mean, we can still push beyond that. It's I don't want to keep Hitch up here if he has stuff he has to do. But he's more glad to book it whenever he needs to. So I mean, we can keep going until he gets done and say, "Yeah, I'm pooped. I'm tired. Whatever," or whatever like that. So it could go on for another hour, so who knows? We'll have a fun time talking about this.
Yeah, well, it kind of depends, since I understand it's pretty late on your side.
I don't have anything to do tonight. I am free. I'm off. I'm probably not gonna go to bed for another 6 hours.
Well, I can speak. I can talk about it a bit more, though. I think I think I can talk for another 15-20 minutes. And if needed, we can just probably reschedule again, and we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, sure. That's fine with me. I said you're welcome. You're welcome anytime to drop in on any one of my shows or in the Discord. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why I made your own section. If you want to, does anything you want to shill, pump out, let me know. I'll shill it out, pimp it out for you. If it's to get what about your comic out or anything like that, I'm more than glad to do it. Just ask me, work for me, I'll work for you. It's whatever.
Yeah, cool. And likewise, I'll do the same. And anyway, you're giving me a reason to wake up Sunday in the morning to good for my sleep schedule. So yeah, not complaining.
Well, I mean, my show on Sundays is at 11 a.m. my time, so that's like what?
That'll be Monday my time, and yeah.
It would be Monday your time?
Yep.
Sunday 11 a.m.?
Sunday 11 a.m. on your side would be Monday my time, if I understand correctly. Since I think we're like 16, 17 hours apart.
Oh. Sparky's Sunday show kind of goes like this.
Since right now, you're right for me, it's Sunday morning right now.
I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away.
God.
Anyway, Sparky, you mentioned about the armors idea and how and how Rock basically calls out his buster and his weapons. The idea behind it is basically when Rock basically commands weapons. You know, Metroid Prime, when you have different hand gestures for different weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea I had, and that's why when Rock called his buster, he basically did the hand sign, which is a callback to all of the classic series characters that are drawn by Inafune, which had the whole the middle finger and the ring finger put together.
Okay, so I think not really call the weapon. It's like. You gotta forgive me. Like I said, being a mechanic, being somebody interested in steampunk and stuff I'm interested in like mechanics on how stuff works. So I think more or less what a simplification of my question is like, what is it? Is it like because we know there's some sort, there is a type of teleporting technology in that world. It's not real extent. But we know there's some sort of teleport technology. We do know that there's a type of morphing technology, which, like I said, allows Gats and Geats to transform into the Reaverbot form. Same with Sarah and some of the other Reaverbots in the game. Is his armor somewhat like that? Is it transforming? Is it teleporting in? Is it morphing? I mean, was it? That's kind of the concept I was going with, and from there is like, how else would you implement that? I pretty much
Sorry, go on.
I know, like with his helmet and stuff like that, you put the helmet on, take the helmet off. It is what it is, and I know you're doing pretty much layman's terms, not like the infinite storage bag like you have in D&D or just like in the game itself. You found this blue refractor, you're going for the game and you don't see the refractor. It's like, where's the refractor?
Oh shit! Sorry, I misunderstood your question. Basically, what Rock has in his armor, and he's limited to only using these abilities while he's in his armor. And I'm not sure if I've written it somewhere in the glossary, but it's basically what role reverse engineered based on information from data.
So I was correct a little bit on role reverse engineer some technology into his armor and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. The reason why I applied it this way was because basically data is basically literally data, and he's a black box of all kinds of basically beyond over usual technology. And the way I see it is basically Roll took data and basically got information from data bit by bit, and basically created armors for basically because she was interested in it, or maybe there's some sort of there's something that she wants to push yourself to be able to do, because there's some sort of connection between the armor and rock. So the way I see it, Zone of the Enders?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the OVA, the Idro OVA, it shows that the longer a person is exposed to one of the basic unknown technology machines, basically the orbital frames, is that it creates a bond with the character. And if another pilot try and hijacks it, or even with the pilot's consent try to pilot it, it basically rejects the pilot and just crashes. So this is something which I've played around with, and basically there's some sort of bond between the armor that Ro created and Rock, based from taken from what she engineered from Data.
So you pretty much you took that concept. It also seems like concepts more like Bubblegum Crisis and what else? I would say Escaflowne, but it doesn't really walk out too well to that point.
Well, kind of super robots, or in a slight really downplayed way, kind of like Evangelion, when each machine is. I'm not saying that the armor is I'm not saying the machine is sentient, but it basically has a bond, which basically it doesn't say that anybody who wears this armor can become as powerful, because the armor would simply refuse to budge, or worse.
Okay, I like that concept. I really do. And I can kind of see what you're exploring around now a little bit with Dark Megaman.
Yeah, in a way, but whether he actually appears or not, or in what capacity, I'm not sure yet. But there's definitely going to be some sort of conflict, which would, he's not even with the whole Dark Megaman thing. He's still essentially a good person, but maybe he became cynical because of something happened, or maybe because he had to go this direction for the bigger picture, or just for self-preservation. To be honest, I'm actually not sure how to use this one. But if it's a what if story that the Mega Man had to do some bad things and he basically became like this, or I don't know.
I've got the perfect thing actually.
Yeah.
So we know in Legend, basically, what you're saying is the armor is kind of linked to Mega Man, and we know Mega Man used to be a purifier unit, and he changed his allegiance from the system and the master to just the master, because it was, I want to say they pretty much had limiters, because it was something that was questioned in Legends 2 from Yuna and Sarah of why did this purifier unit become the greatest aberrant of all? Why did he change his programming? Well, we know it's because it's bond with the master and stuff like that, but at this point in time, he has no memory, he has no recollection of it. Data has all that. So it could be a possibility, like in the third subgate, because we know that's a control room for the main gate. We know that place is eerie, it's dark, you go in there, it's unlike the other two subgates we're into. It kind of puts you into almost into a fear state, especially with like the backdrop music and stuff like that. You could possibly put into like something he reads, he understands the control panel, he reads it and he doesn't understand why. It could be something that that his memories that he probably repressed or something like that Data has but doesn't have no more. And the how can you put it, his original programming started to come back a little bit. You can, that it's an implementation of what you could use for it. That's how I would interpret it. And Data would do something like Data does and help Rockman out, and he's able to regain control more or less to that extent.
Yeah, or if anything, you can just show flashbacks or those or splitting timelines or something, just to show off all the possibilities. So it could be a way to just throw that in as a concept that, oh, if you take these certain routes, you can, oh, these are the consequences, to give them an idea of what would happen in the future. So it's like a future vision or something. That can be a way to interpret it.
Some sort of a dreamscape or something like that.
Yeah, and which also it's a lot, which is also something that's played around as well with the whole splitting timelines. And yeah, speaking of the splitting timelines, if it's not going to be a sequel or something flatter, if there's going to be a remake of the different games, one thing I would be interesting to see if there were different endings. Like you have to complete 100% to get the golden ending or something, or you maybe have an ending that's generic, or you have one that's good or bad, kind of like the Castlevania games.
That would be interesting to see. You know, you're talking about like if they remade the Megaman Legends series.
Yeah, but of course, this is well, just being idealistic here. But if hypothetically, if this happened, and how would it be presented? Which is something which I've been looking around on, since like you've seen, is what I wanted to do is not make a direct adaptation, but to basically switch things around a little. So, for example, the order of when Tron and the Tron fight and the Bond fight are different, but there are reasons for it. For example, Rock gets support from this character or from this situation, and how things play out, and yeah.
Well,
yeah,
you know, and that's one of the things too. Isn't it in the first game, or I can't remember if it's the first or second? I think it's actually in the first game. Well, Bond tries to convince Megaman to join over to their side. Was it the first game or was it the second game?
That's in the first. That's the first one.
Yeah, the first one, it's if I remember, it was basically Tron trying to ask Rock to join them, but it was like, you know, the first encounter. But a weird what if would be, what if Tron asked Rock again if they want to join them after showing that they're not that bad, or they have their reasons for doing it, and it gives you a sort of a split fact shipping like in some RPGs.
That would be an interesting take. It really would be. Yeah. And that's another thing too. It's like, you know, adapting the different storylines into your comic. I don't really see you can adapt the things that happen in Misadventures. That had to be its own thing, or something that like recollects, like it'd be something like from like Naruto or Bleach. It'd be like, you know, Tron and Bond on the ship. Like, if you're like just looking for something to pad up the story and stuff like that, they could reminisce about the events and misadventures of Tron Bond, and then it goes from the main story to that one, and then you go through the misadventures of Tron Bond and stuff like that. That's a clever adaptation and way to incorporate that into your comic if you ever went down that route.
Yeah,
and
I think at most, since I don't want to divert focus too much, would be like you said, would be just show them in like single panel flashbacks, or just say, for example, if Tron or Teasel mentioned we don't want to repeat of that incident again, and just show a panel of the events from the misadventures, and I think that would be enough, since I don't want to shift the focus too much.
Yeah, it would be. And one of the things I did find out whenever I was my story never went anywhere, because I came to the sad realization I'm not a novelist. But the idea with Dark Man, it almost sounds like something with Nafumi from Shield Hero, with the Dark Shield that he has, and I know Jim X can input a lot more on it than I could. But that's like an interesting concept that really would. It'd be interesting if you ever did implement it, if it was a different timeline or anything like that. It would be interesting, especially, I mean, you see that in the X games. You see that with Zero. You see that with X. You see them.
The new Doom is basically the 2016 is basically a reboot, but it's also a soft reboot is basically what they call it. And you could basically do the same thing with Mega Man Legends a couple years from now, and just have a nice, have a better story. I mean, Doom didn't even have like a real story. It was kind of like, okay, Doom guy is going to go to hell and he's going to fight hell. He gets back in his pet rabbit's dead. The end. Um, and literally, that is the story of Doom guy in Doom, the first Doom. um, and you could do like, and now you got this whole Doom Slayer story with Doom 2016. It's amazing. It's You didn't even know you wanted the story, but you got it, and it was good. And you could do the same thing with Mega Man. You could actually make the story coherent this time, and
Yeah. Actually, that is one. Yeah, there's one thing that I wanted to do with the comic adaptation is to put more callbacks to the previous games. Even as much as I understand why they wanted to separate this entry from the previous ones, but at the same time, it would be good to have some sort of connection to say, oh, this is how they got their name. This is how history and how it came to the situation. And
I mean,
yeah,
isn't like it's supposed to go Mega Man? 100 years later, you have X. Skips again, and it goes to like X0.
We've talked about this earlier, and unfortunately, in the way they've got the story set up now as it is, it's three separate universes. So reiterating, it's Mega Man X0 ZX. Then you have the Battle Network and Star Forces, and then you have Legends right there on the bottom. That's by itself. You can you can
timeline.
Huh?
Legends was never really in the timeline.
It wasn't. You can make the argument that it's like so many thousands of years beyond ZX. You really can make that argument because things can't line up, but there's also a lot of loopholes of it doesn't make sense for some of the stuff.
The way they ended ZX was with Zero pretty much supposedly dying.
That's how they did Zero. I don't know how they did ZX.
Did Zero die again in this series?
He's died. Yes. I don't know how many times.
Technically, he's died like 3 to 4 times.
Yeah, he's basically Kenny at this point.
Yeah. Oh my God, they killed Zero.
I mean, like the first time they did it,
it was actually kind of sad, and you're like, and in the second one, you got to bring him back to life if you can find all his parts, and that was really kind of cool.
Well,
and like I guess in the third one they killed him off, or third or fourth one.
Fifth, the fifth one.
Yeah. I am completely annoying the chat. Hi, Savage Sands 360. Have a wrench. I don't know if you saw that. I'm sorry, it took a while to look over. As you can tell, I'm kind of distracted. But no, it's Zero is just one of those characters. He dies, he comes back. He dies, he comes back. He dies, he comes back. But yeah,
the originator of the Sigma virus.
He was. But you get that's something I don't understand because in the Robot Master timeline, they bring the Robot Masters back, and they bring because Mega Man makes a point to save the AI chips, and they basically just rebuild them and they repurpose them. Unfortunately, some of them don't want to be repurposed, and they end up being, put into the robot museum and stuff like that. But they make that effort, and
are you referring to the Archie comics on that one?
They actually did that in the games too.
Oh, so that's why it was. I thought it was a unique thing to the comics. I didn't know it was.
No, they actually did that to the games too, because they don't show it in the other games. Because they were simply made and they didn't think there was no real consistent storyline in the games, but they bring that point up in like Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10 and Mega Man 11. they bring back the fact that they make it a point to basically undo what Wily has done, because Mega Man does not like destroying other robots. He does it when he has to, but they try to restore them whenever they get done. And they kind of bring that back to what they've done beforehand in the past. And yeah, they took that concept and they expanded a little bit more in the Archie comments, which I do like. But they never really took that concept into X. The only time they did it is either for Sima or for Zero. It's like, okay, you got all of the original Mavericks, or the original Maverick hunters that turned Maverick, but they didn't. They brought them back, and they kind of showed that in the Archie crossover between Sonic and Mega Man.
The last crossover they did, yeah.
Yeah, the last crossover they brought them back, but they were like zombified. It wasn't them, and I know X was having a hard time dealing with it.
From my understanding of the Reploids versus the Robot Masters, there wasn't an identity chip. It was a breakdown of a brain, basically. So if you destroyed them, there was nothing data-wise restorable. You could restore them, but they would be pretty much, unless you had a copy of their personality, there was no copy to put in.
Yeah. But
so it was basically a virus control.
Yeah. You would basically think that they would do something like that, though. But they don't.
Not with the way the storyline for the X timeline was. It was basically Mavericks were gone rogue due to a malfunction due to either the Sigma virus or their own free will.
Yeah.
Because they were copies of X, which caused an unknown element factor to happen. Which caused the Maverickness to happen.
Now, hell, even the copy of X went rogue in Zero.
Which brings an interesting question is it's probably just a semantics thing, but when they say someone has gone Maverick or turned irregular or whatever it means, it's actually a pretty broad term, since it doesn't have to be virus it doesn't have to be a virus that causes them to go crazy. It can also be like the Repliforce, and they say that they were not treated. Yeah, they just went rogue because they were accused of something that
all of you was their response.
Yeah, and that's why they
changed kind of implementations of that too, and it makes you wonder. Okay, they labeled them as Mavericks, but they weren't Mavericks, and they kind of go through on the record and say they were manipulated. And the same thing with if you go through and play the Mega Man X Command mission, they get sent to Giga City to basically quell the Rebellion Army, which was under control of Epsilon. But it turned out as a master grand plan from Colonel Redups. He manipulated all of them. And at the end of it, they go through a mission log and said that Epsilon was not a Maverick.
Well, I think during the command mission, because the command mission was supposed to happen years after all the X games were done.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be Sigma's gone, he's destroyed, the virus has been neutralized, permanently sterilized. So their term Maverick at that point was probably based on the idea that it was based on the infected with the Sigma virus.
Yeah. Or because just gone against the programming.
Or their original function.
Yeah.
Or if we're talking about it in real life equivalent, it's like calling a criminal a criminal. They may be how to say, they can be robbers, they can be serial killers, manslaughter, highway robbery, and all that, etc. But the blanket term is still criminal, and that's probably what the equivalent of it is.
Yeah, because they bring up Aberrant Unit and Legends, and it's like, what does Aberrant Unit mean? It means they give a simple term in the game. They've gone against the program. They've gone against their function, against the system, and it's basically that terminology for it. But yeah, it's a lot of different concepts they can do, and I sidetracked from what I was trying to get at earlier, but one of the things I found out while I was making my story was getting bouncing ideas off people, and I found that to be really extremely helpful. And I came up with a lot of cool ideas I wanted to implement in my story. I could never do it because I couldn't. I had the idea, I had the story up in my head, but I could never put it down on paper. That was one of my Achilles heels. I could just never get down onto a physical format to explain what I had up in my head, and that's one of the things I have trouble with. And I don't know where the story's gonna go from here, but I do know it's been very interesting reading the parts I have read.
Who said I haven't read any of them? Sparky just kind of invited me on here because I knew a little bit about Mega Man 64, the Legends. But I might want to take a look at them. I really haven't played Mega Man Legends 2 yet because I never, played it on PlayStation. Like I said, I learned about it on the 64, and I learned through Sparky there was a sequel. I've been meaning to play, but I just never got around to it.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, thanks again.
All right, so I mean, unless anyone else has anything to ask or anything to add or want to bring up real quick, I mean, that's pretty much concludes what I have. I mean, I think I can go on forever talking and bouncing ideas, what ifs, and stuff like that. Kind of period. What you gotta do next? But
yeah, one thing I would like to talk about maybe later down the line would be like the whole idea of the air pirates and maybe a bit about the bonds. Maybe next time we can probably go for a long time because we know that the bonds come from what looks like a aristocratic setting, and they just turned to pirates for whatever reason. Why they have such a strong beef with why they're so bad with money and all that. And why did they turn to piracy? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, but that's why we can leave that for next time or something.
Oh yeah, they got some ties with a lot of different elements in different games. But yeah, that's something we can definitely talk about next time. I'll have to. Hell, this could even be a thing. Like a Legends podcast or something like that. Who knows?
Yes, like some kind of we'll figure out a name for it, but it's not it's pretty good. But for next time we're going to make it regular. I think we can probably cut it to, let's say, 1 hour or something, since it's this time is an exception since I'm usually quite busy.
Yeah, I know. As we have been streaming for about 3 hours 14 minutes, so
yeah. Well,
time flies.
Time flies. Oh yeah! Wow, yeah. Hardly actually
Time
noticed.
flies when you talk about Mega Man.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I think we got something to talk about next time, and we'll see how we can organize it. We can just continue talking on the in your channel, and just to see how we can organize it. Any new ideas, how to make it one thing, and and we'll just talk more on in the channel, and yeah. Anyway, thanks again, Sparky, and nice to speak with you, Jim Max and Dracona, and yeah, a pleasure.
Likewise.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want, if you want to dip, you can dip, or if you want to stay in, you can stay in for a little bit. It's whatever. I know you probably got stuff to do, but
I'll talk to you guys later. Anyway, thanks again. Okay, see ya.
Yep, later, man.
Yep.
All right, later.
Later.
All right, so you two got any closing thoughts or statements or something you want to add on to it with me, or do we just want to go?
All I got to say is, hey, Capcom, if Doom can do it, ID software can do it, you can do it too.
If I can learn to do it, you can learn to do it. Now I want to go watch Anastasia. Fuck!
I'm not going to extend this any longer than you've already had it going.
Okay. Well, with that...
I have a whole bunch of thoughts.
A whole bunch of thoughts? Good thoughts, bad thoughts.
Look, I have theories out the yin yang I can roll out, but I don't think you want me rambling.
Not for another. Not. We gotta get this.
We can do it off air, and you can bring it back up later. But yeah, with Hitchef and probably KION, I think I am gonna bounce around the idea of just doing like a Legends podcast, something like that. Because like I said, there's a lot of freaking ideas that you can go off of, and it's just frustrating that they never went through them or even attempted to go through them. It's like, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to go ahead and close out the stream. You two can go ahead and stay in. We can talk as the credits going through and the stream's ending. But for everyone that came in and watched, thank you. I did appreciate it. I'll express this again. Please retweet, share this around. If you know any Legends fans, fanatics, or anything like that, share this with them. Please like and subscribe. And just keep into kind of like the opening I had at the beginning of the stream. I had the We Are Rockman Dash versus Flutter, the Flutter versus Gesellschaft remix theme. I'm just going to close this out with the actual original Mega Man Legends credits. So with that, go ahead and start the outro. Thank you for joining, everyone who watched, and maybe we can do this again sometime and have some fun. So, later, guys.
In about an hour, we'll be arriving at our destination, Catalog's Island. Double check your equipment readings and make sure everything's in working order. I swear this treasure will be ours or my name's not Bond. Let's do it!
Gramps, can you open up the number 11 valve again?
Got it!
What are you looking at? Oh. It's a dog! Oh, what happened this time? I can't take my eyes off you for a second, can I? Just you wait till we get back. You're in a lot of trouble. Oh, no! Hey, you! Let's go!
Oh, you're mine, little boy. I'll get you!
I'm going to fire up the engine, Mega Man. You grab that blue lever there. Gotcha. 3, 2, 1, Mega Man, now! Here goes. It worked! Up and away!
Let's go!
That's it!
Fire!
Keep it up!
It looks like they're serious. They want to go out fighting just like cornered rats. On your toes, everyone!
No more playing around! I'll show them! Everyone ready? We're moving out! Roger!
the reinitialization of this island systems and memory backup of its bureaucratic.
Stop! Stop it!
Eden systems ready, awaiting confirmation. Requested backup of bureaucratic model Megaman Juno complete. Execution of catalog's reinitialization program will commence in 100 seconds.
What should I do? Interrupt command! Priority command